This winter, the Bureau of Cultural Arts is offering a variety of classes throughout the city of Cleveland, including ceramics, watercolor painting, dance, theater, cooking, arts and crafts, and more. With a variety of youth and adult classes, there's something for everyone. All the instruction, equipment, and basic materials are provided free of charge. For a full list of offerings, please visit us online or call Cadell Fine Arts at 216-664-4103. Classes are going on now.
This winter, our neighborhood resource and recreation centers will offer co-ed in-house basketball for ages 4 to 17 years old. We provide all of the training, instruction, equipment, and uniforms to all of the participants, free of charge. Each site will offer skills and drill sessions prior to the start of the season. Game days and times vary at each location. So what are you waiting for? We want to see you shoot your shot on the court. Please contact your nearest neighborhood resource and recreation center or call 216-420-7613 for more information.
This year, the Bureau of Cultural Arts will be hosting the 24th Annual National Arts Program Juried Exhibition and Awards Ceremony at Cadell Fine Arts, March 28th through April 25th, 2025, with categories for youth and adult and amateur to professional. All are welcome. Do not miss this opportunity to show off your talents this spring. For more information, visit nationalartsprogram.org/Cleveland. Registration opens Monday, February 17th, 2025.
Page 280, Building and Housing Director's Office, Director Sally Martin O'Toole. Page 281, Salaries and Wages, 2024 unaudited, $2,246,655. 2025 budgeted, $2,295,096. Page 282, total expenditures, 2024 unaudited, $4,480,121. 2025 budgeted, $4,975,783. And page 283, number of employees December of 2024, 29, budgeted 2025, 31, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Director, do you have any opening comments?
Through the chair to the committee, no opening comments. We're open for questions.
All right. As I get this tablet working. All right. Can you, Director, we see a 5 headcount increase from the previous budget. Can you touch on the changes there?
Two vacancies. Two vacancies.
Yeah. To the chair, we have 2 vacancies. So we last year had budgeted for 31 positions. 29 were filled, and we're still budgeting for 31.
Oh yeah, sorry, I flipped too close down. My apologies. There it is. I see 31 to 29. So we have an equal budget. I flipped too quickly. Okay. All right. So this is Department Administration, equal head count. All right. What questions do I have on Department Administration? Councilman Plensick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 282, under charges for services, can you explain that to us, what that is and why there's a $400,000 drop there?
So when you look at 368 and 6360, it says zero. Actual? Yeah. Okay. Oh wait, that's charges for service. Yeah. Oh, we're talking private. Yeah. Ask them back there. Ask O'Toole in the back.
To the chair, just give us one moment. We're checking with the director.
Okay,
Thanks.
and then while they're looking under capital outlay as well, there is capital building betterments existing. There's $150,000 there increase. Explain that one to us as well.
Director, you're welcome to join us at the table if you'd like.
Through the chair, the council member, there's planned renovations for room 510 and 511 for the increasing staff needs for building and housing. So they're renovating those 2 rooms to accommodate the additional headcount and code enforcement.
But that's what the 150 is for.
Yeah, through the chair, the councilman, that's correct.
Okay, then what about charges for service? What is it?
We're checking on that right now.
Well, we're gonna outsource.
Director, you can join us at the table if you'd like.
Should, you're insistent?
You're welcome to. Good to see you too. Good morning.
She said that
Turn
with
your
a
mic
straight
on,
face,
please,
though.
Director. I anticipate this will not be the only question, so you might as well
Through
join
the
us.
chair to the councilman. No, I assume not. We also are going to be doing some outside plans examination because we lack capacity as well. And if McCoy has anything else to say about it, he's welcome to come to the table, our fiscal manager.
Well, that's not an explanation. Charges for service is down 400,000, so,
On the revenue side?
right, so explain that one to me, somebody.
I don't know that I can. You wanna-
Come on up, sir. Grab a microphone, turn it green.
And identify yourself.
Yeah, please give us your name and title.
To the table, this is McCoy Pizzuti, Fiscal Manager for the Building and Housing Department.
All right, Mr. Pizzuti, the question around charges for service.
Charges for services. For under contractual services for professional services for 2024, we had $990,834. This year, $671,715. The reasoning for this is for a property rental lease at Airy View 75 Plaza. We recategorize it for property rental.
So that, let me get this straight so I can understand this. So
Sure.
charges for service, which is in a line item in the budget, you are now, you've changed the description?
That is correct, sir. It was under professional services contract over. Oh, my apologies, sir.
Charges for service under revenue.
And if you could just pull the microphone a little closer to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a $400,000 drop in revenue.
I believe that differences in the drop is just credit card processing fees. Basically, we had for 2024, we had a lot more coming in for building and construction permits. So that's where I believe that is coming from, sir.
Okay, well, we're going to ask through staff, Mr. Chairman, for broader explanation. We went from, we were at 447,000, approximately 448,000 2022, 482,000 in 2023, 854,000 in 2024, and now for projected this year is 458, so there's approximately $400,000.
So, Councilman, just on that note, the
Yeah.
24 budget for them was 451.
Yeah.
So it appears that they budget low and come in over.
Okay, well, they'll provide that to us in
Yeah, but
writing.
if, a further explanation,
Okay.
Director.
Through the
That-
chair to the councilman, we'll deep dive on that. and
Okay,
get back
thank you. So on 283, page 283, the attorneys that are working for, in housing court, where do they show up at? They show up under the law department. Where do they show up at in the budget?
The law department. Through the chair to the councilman, you mean code enforcement lawyers?
Yes.
In the law
And
department.
they'll show up, okay, in the law department. I just want to make that, find that for sure. So then, let me see what we got here. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman Polensek. I've got Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think that Councilman Casey may also want to ask about this, but I believe it was just touched upon. So through the chair, the property rental on page 281 is, all of it is for Erie View?
To the chair to the councilman, that is correct.
Yeah, I mean, these are always, it always gives us pause, right? These are big numbers for rental. So I think every year since I've been on council, we've asked for some kind of overview of all of the city's rents that we're paying to private landlords. And I guess the underlying question below that is there a possibility of negotiation or a lease negotiation? Because these just always, these really add up when you look at all the different departments that are leasing space. Has that already been a follow-up item? I know it's been a follow-up item in previous years. Is that a follow-up item this year?
And Councilwoman, if I may, I would expand that. Director, if we can get a report out from Chief Tewin on where we are in that process, I know she's been running it. I'd put that request in. I don't know if that is as expansive as we submitted earlier, but we need and maybe that's an MSP hearing, but I know that the administration was looking at all of our property rentals and doesn't make sense to rent or buy, and that whole question. So thank you,
Okay,
Councilman.
thank you for that reminder about that.
Yep.
That process is, that sort of evaluation is underway already. So I also wanted just to take a moment on page 283, looking at staffing. I'm curious to know through the chair, how many staff are directly related to lead, any of the department's lead activities? I'm curious to know who in the director's office is reflective of that through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, we have Karen Dittmer here as well to answer any specific lead-related questions, but currently we've had some attrition, so we have 2 open positions in lead currently. So we have Karen, we have Victor Santillo, and we've moved 2 staff down from code enforcement to work in the 1 to 3 family lead compliance unit, which is Rhonda Darrett and Sheila Walter. And then we have Will Battle in the department right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. I think it's hard because we're right now on the director's office, so I really would appreciate holding the big picture on lead staffing across all your offices and what those responsibilities are, because I think some of those folks are not in the director's office. So for purposes of being on the director's office, part of the discussion, which positions within the director's office are directly related to lead, through the chair?
Director?
So it would be all but 2 that I just described to you. So the 2 that still are in code enforcement would be Rhonda Darrett and Sheila Walter. So the others would be budgeted in the director's office. There was a little bit of flex with what's budgeted where. So just be mindful that, there can be some odd overlap.
Thank you. So through the chair, there are 2 positions in code enforcement for lead, and I know we'll be coming to code enforcement later today, hopefully sooner than later for you, Director. All right. So there are 2 positions under code enforcement, and those are both filled. They're budgeted and filled. And then in the director's office, there are how many positions related to lead, and some of those are vacant, through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, we will have, we have 2 ES2 vacancies, which are the people that review reports. So those are vacant right now. And then we are having another departure of a legal secretary in the next couple weeks. So that's where we are with
And
director's office.
Okay,
roles.
so the lead-related positions in the director's office are under Karen Detmer.
Yes, correct.
And then
Through the
there's
chair.
Victor Santillo, and there are 2 vacant positions of people who read reports and an impending vacancy of a legal secretary?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay, so 5 total positions in the director's office. So, I know these are, what's challenging with our budget hearing is that it's not meant to be an operation hearing, but I think one thing I'll be looking for today is sort of that through line of understanding related to our lead work, and can also follow up with staff offline to make sure I have a full understanding. So, though, in regard to those 2 vacancies of individuals who read reports, how soon do we? Those seem like really important positions. How soon do we anticipate those positions being filled?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, those are currently posted. So hopefully fairly soon.
Okay. All right. I'll leave it at that for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Anthony Hairston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a reminder, we did hold operational reviews this past fall, and we intend to, once we get through this process, as we head into the spring and summertime, to bring building and housing back along with the other departments that fall within the DPS to have deeper conversations about their work as we go into the new year, into the spring and summer. And in case that's a help for anyone, we will be digging a little bit deeper into each of these departments that fall on the DPS as we move along. So I just wanted to make that comment. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for handling this morning's session. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir.
Truly
You're welcome.
appreciate
You can come over here and grab this gavel at
Councilman,
any point, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I truly appreciate you this morning. Just a couple questions in administration, and just in case I didn't catch it, because it was kind of hard to hear down here. On page 282, under capital outlay, building betterments existing, $150,000. We've never had that budgeted before. Can someone explain what that is?
Yeah, through the chair of the council person, there's going to be a renovation of Route 510 and 511 to handle additional staffing for code enforcement.
Okay, so that's internal renovations here in 601.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, yes, room 510, 511.
Got it. And through the chair, any reason why it would be coming out of the department's budget or a line item that has been allocated to the department's budget versus the capital budget? Like we've heard other times through the chair that renovations, other things would come out of the capital budget instead?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilperson, if it's a small amount and we can handle it in operations, we do, but if it's
Okay.
a larger, more expensive one, that would always be handled on capital. This is not expansive, we decided to handle out of the operating fund.
Got it. Okay. In the other contractual has went up. What was the increase for? In case I missed it through the chair.
So through the chair to the councilman, this is for printing of manuals, parcel mapping, database use, and Snyder Blake temps.
Snyder Blake Temps. Okay. And through the chair, what was Snyder, through the chair to the either director, what will Snyder Blake Temps be doing as relates to the director's office of building and housing?
Through the chair to the councilman, it's related to capacity support in the records room for rental registration, vacant building registration, and also in lead, there's been a need for someone to just help triage things and put them into a cella.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the director, when did any portion of building and housing move over to 75 Erie View?
Through the chair to the councilman, all the code enforcement staff moved during the pandemic. So that was negotiated as a pandemic. They were all on the fourth floor, and they were kind of crammed in. If you've seen the fourth floor of City Hall, you know that it's not really meant to house staff, but it was housing, our code enforcement department.
And Mr. Chairman, to the director, that was 2020?
Yes.
All right. And then the question is, why do we just have rent now? How much space do we have over there? It's just, how much space do we have over there?
Through the chair to the councilman, we've always been paying rent there. There may have been an issue. I think, in fact, I'll let finance chime in on that, but we've been paying rent there this whole time. So we have the entire fourth floor of both 65 and 75 Erie View that houses code enforcement staff, and then we have part of the first floor, which houses the lead staff.
All right. Mr. Chairman, to the director, can you explain why we just have rental in the budget now?
Through the chair to the councilperson, this previously has been budgeted under professional services, that's why you see a big drop, a $300,000 drop from last year. Should have always been in property rental, but it was put in professional services. Now we're moving it to the proper code going forward.
All right. And then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, we're not paying utilities over there then for that space?
I think so.
Through the chair to the councilperson, that's included as part of that rent.
All right, and then don't we, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Gentile, don't we usually break that down?
Through the chair of the councilperson, if we're paying them directly, but because we're paying it as part of the rent, it's not broken out separately because it's on the same bill.
Okay,
Rent.
so we don't know how much we're paying for, in the book, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Gentile, we don't know how much we're paying over there for gas, electric, water.
Through the chair of the councilperson, we can go back and look at the bill and see if it's broken out like that. I'm not aware if it is or it isn't.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to the director, can you see if it is? Because one of my tasks that I'm working on is seeing how much we're paying in utilities for all the rental properties that we're doing. So if we could get a breakdown of that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, through the chair of the councilman, yes, we will get you a breakout.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Casey. Any additional questions for Director's Office before we move on to Code Enforcement? Hearing none, please read Code Enforcement.
Page 284, Division of Code Enforcement, Commissioner Thomas Vanover. Page 285, Salaries and Wages, 2024 unaudited, $6,185,159. 2025 budgeted, $7,036,075. Page 286, total expenditures, 2024 unaudited, $8,750,098. 2025 budgeted, $10,502,365. And page 287, number of employees December of 2024, 92. Budgeted 2025, 120, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, directors, we have a 5-person increase here. Can you speak to that?
Through the chair to the councilman, obviously adding capacity in code enforcement is fairly critical to achieving the aims of our goals of residents first.
Okay, so we've got a lot of moving numbers here. So property maintenance inspector went from 24 down to 8. So big decrease there. But it looks like you've also got. So is this mainly within property inspectors, Director? What is the gist of the increase here?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, and you need to be mindful of the fact that that's pretty fluid. It can circulate. If we get more great PMI candidates, we'll swap it and hire them. The difference, though, is that the PMI candidates are a classified civil service category versus the unclassified nature of an RBI or a BI.
Right, we see the increase in residential building inspector here as well. So, Director, this budget reflects what you believe you need to, not only headcount, but also pay bands, et cetera. I know that's a separate conversation, but to achieve your goals.
Through the chair to the councilman, Mr. Chairman, we believe that we will be renegotiating our Local 100 contracts shortly.
Yep.
So we're taking a close look at those pay bands to be sure that, we did make an increase to them in the last iteration of the Local 100 contract, which we believe has helped with staffing and retention. And we believe we'll take a hard look at that again and see if we need to make some additional tweaks. But, certainly if we can backfill all of the open positions and the additional 5 that we're proposing, we feel that we will be in pretty good shape.
Thank you. And to the Director of Finance, can you talk to us about what professional services are required here? The $40,000 line item.
Okay. To the chair, this is for an outside plan examiner consulting firm. So fees for that.
To do what?
Through the chair to the councilman, we are looking at building the capacity to review plans
Great.
outside of our shop.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great news. All right, I've got Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the director on page 287, last year we budgeted for 115 people. We had 92 employees of December 2024, but this year you're budgeting for 120. Can you explain why this council should give you an increase of 5 employees when you haven't met your mark for the budgeted amount in 2024?
Through the chair to the councilman, this is our one time of year that we can come to you and ask for staffing. So our hope is that when we've been extremely aggressive about recruiting and staffing, we brought in more than 20 people last year. The issue, of course, that we have in our field is that a lot of our staff, are coming to us sort of at the end of their trades work, and many of them end up retiring, et cetera. And so we always have attrition in our department, and we always have a need for more staff. So we work very hard to staff this up, and I think we've had great success this year. We believe we'll have additional success. We're starting to get that pipeline from civil service for PMIs, so we'd like to have the flexibility to expand our staff to meet the needs that we know exist in the field. Code enforcement is an ongoing and constant need.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, to the director, do you believe that you'll be able to hit your 120 mark this year if we give you 120?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, I do. I think through aggressive work and collaboration with civil service and also HR, which we have been doing, we've had success actually at attracting people from some of the hiring events that the city has put on. So that's been a big boon to our staffing, and continued partnership that way to do outreach and continue to bring people in.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chairman, if I can just ask two questions. Just get me the information, because I don't want to hold it up during a budget hearing. So, Mr. Chairman, to the director, if you can give me what Building and Housing's policy is when you know that a business is operating illegally, what the policy or the procedures are from Building and Housing in order to rectify that situation, either to close them down or to get them into compliance. And the second one is, in January 2022, City Council passed Ordinance 98-2022, enacting new Section 337.19, which is the recreational vehicles and boats in residential areas. Can you provide me with the number of tickets or citations that have been issued through Building and Housing under that code since 2022? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman, yes.
Thank you. Does our team have those two requests?
I'll give it to you.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Casey. Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the director, my line of question is along the same line as that has been asked, so I won't re-ask some of the questions. But the 120, how sure are we to get to that figure this year? Because we've talked about this previously, Mr. Chairman, in other operating situations and when it deals with code enforcement.
Through the chair to the councilman, as sure as we can be of anything in this world, we're certainly giving it our all. We believe we can renegotiate also our union contract to make it even more attractive, but I believe we've had good success over the past year, and that makes me believe that we'll have good success this year too.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, do you have a breakdown of the code enforcement metrics on page 284? Where's the bulk of, do you have it broken down to neighborhoods? How many, Mr. Chairman, to the director, what areas are being inspected? It would be nice to have that information for our community to know what's being inspected and what's not. Do you have that breakdown?
Through the chair to the councilman, we can break it down however we want to break it down. So yes, we can break it down by ward. And I believe we may have provided some of that during our oversight hearing, but we're happy to send metrics to you again. A lot of our work now is on open data as well and can be viewed. But our systematic efforts have largely, a lot of them have been in Ward 1.
So I would like to get that, especially with the commercial area, knowing exactly what. Now, when you do your code enforcement, and this is where is always the catchy part of it, is how many of these inspections go to court?
Through the chair to the councilman, we're certainly all about code compliance. And so we have metrics, and I'm sure that the law department has also supplied that in their budget in terms of how many properties have been taken to court. Bear in mind this year, too, we have a new tool in civil tickets that is not a court-driven process, but is a fine-based process. And, we've been starting that process.
It's a who process? I'm sorry.
Fines.
Okay.
So fines are issued, and if they remain unpaid, they go against the property tax duplicate. So that changes the face of how we do code enforcement in a large way, as we believe those are going to get immediate impact. So we've dispatched probably around 100 or so far. We're about to batch issue thousands of them for people who have not complied with rental registration, lead safe. So we believe this is going to drive compliance a lot faster.
Right. And so I think what would be helpful, Mr. Chairman, because you have a lot of different moving parts here, with your inspections being done and then it moves to a different process. So I guess how do we, and it would be, how do we determine how successful we are in terms of code enforcement, some kind of matrix system set in place that lets us see how successful the Division of Code Enforcement has been. Do you have some kind of system
Through the
like
chair
that?
to the councilman, I'm going to quote Councilman Polensek here. The proof's in the pudding. How do the neighborhoods look? How many code issues are becoming code compliant? And that's what I intend to track this year, because I want to see how many of them have resolved. Because if you continue to just do things following the procedures you've always followed that have never worked, you're going to get what doesn't work. And I think we've changed the paradigm here. And I think the pudding is cooking, and we should see some results.
I see. And so this 41,120 code enforcement metrics came off from the men and women who are comprised in this book on page 287 at 92. So currently we have 92 people in the department?
Correct.
I see. And the rest of the people you look to bring on, what areas if, on page 287, where are we looking to boast those numbers at? And why?
Through the chair to the councilman, are you talking about the budget of 120 heads for that division?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I mean, the plan is to add most of the capacity in, with code inspectors.
Where is it at?
What?
I mean, what did you just, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Through the chair to the councilman, adding code inspectors is
Okay.
where the bulk of that change. Yes.
I see. All right. And Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions. Just wanted to understand the metrics. And when we look at, Mr. Chairman, the metrics, the historic data that's been given to us is how do you measure that number of the code enforcement inspections? We know that we have the complaints and the violations issued, but kind of have an idea of what that 41,000 looks like and where it's located. And then what is the success rate? Are we 75, 80%, 90%? So, and that was something that we talked about, Mr. Chairman, probably about a year or two ago, about having Mrs. Elizabeth Crow, analytics, and trying to really and I don't know, is she working with your department now? She is. How long has she been working, Mr. Chairman, to the director with you guys?
Through the chairman to the councilman, we have had great results working with Urban AI. And if you look at the city's open data portal, you'll see that building and housing likely has the most open data pieces on the site, quite deliberately. One of the many dashboards we've stood up in the department is looking at productivity by inspector. We can slice and dice it however you want, you know, taking into consideration how many days off people have. We can see what their daily productivity is like. So there's been a lot of changes in terms of data mining in the department. And so, yeah, absolutely, the intent is to know that we're making a difference and seeing results in the community. It's not about how many citations you issue, it's about how many properties come into compliance.
And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I know that we have a program where we don't want to tear houses down, but we want to try to rehabilitate them. So if they're in demolition, somehow they get out of demolition. Mr. Chairman, can you make that available to especially to me and other council members who may not be aware of properties that are on the condemnation list, and then somehow find their way off that condemnation list, and then next thing you know, we have a person out there trying to fix it up. And what comes to mind, Mr. Chairman, is a property that sat next to John F. Kennedy School for 8 years, just a complete eyesore when they built that new school there. And it was just horrible for years, and I complained about it. The city finally got around to it and condemned the property. The property somehow got off the condemnation list because I couldn't see how anyone could rehabilitate this house. And it had a blue tarp on it. It was really bad. You name it, it was a bad house. And so somehow it got off the demolition list, and a contractor had it. And this is the one, Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Martin, is 15101 Miles Avenue. And now whoever has had it has been working on it for 2 years in a row. And I've been going back and forth with your people about it. And they've been really slow with it. They just pull so much at a time. Now, if you go out there right now, it's just absolutely a nightmare still. And then I don't see how and where these people are found and why they can't start a rehabilitation and have it completed. This is 2 years or 2.5 years of them rehabilitating the house, and it looks no better than when they first when they have just blue tarp on it. It's just that bad right now. So how do we, Mr. Chairman, when we talk about code enforcement, we have these eyesores like this, how do we deal with situations like this that just brings the entire vibe in the community down? And it's right in the heart of our school zone.
Through the chair to the councilman, in terms of trying to save properties, yes, obviously we want to save our naturally affordable housing. What we were finding in the past, and we've corrected the situation, is that people would pull permits and string us along, right? I'm going to pull a roof permit, but I'm not really going to do anything, but I'm keeping the wrecking ball away by pulling the permit. Well, we changed that, and we require construction drawings, and we require a lot of information if you want to pull your house out of condemnation. So in the case of that property, yes, they supply that. Now, the question of speed is another matter. So just as by way of example, we had this discussion around residents first with vacant buildings. So if someone buys a vacant building, our rule is you have to have it renovated within 6 months. But there were exceptions put into that from council, because council wanted to know that the person living in the neighborhood would have the ability to earn the money, put the money into the house, bring the house back. So there's a patience there that they wanted us to take, above all, with local actors trying to do the right thing in their neighborhood.
That's time.
It's a balance.
Councilman?
Mr. Chairman, to the director, I don't disagree that there's a balance and we should have some empathy for people who are in the neighborhood wants to purchase the property, but I'm not so sure that this is that case. And so when we're dealing with something that has such a profound impact on so many people, and just the geography of where it's located, can you please look into this particular situation, Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Martin? And then let me just say this. I really, I've heard a lot and I've seen a lot in the department. And so a lot of people talk about the good work that you do in the department on a daily basis, that you go above and beyond, and you're really pushing hard to change that department. I know that when you first started the position, I told you you have my hat's off to you, because you really have a department, in terms of how I feel about the department, that has a real big profit margin. And I've always believed that for departments that are generating revenue, that some of that revenue, at least a good percentage of it, should be plowed back in to that department to help it expand and help it grow. And so it is my hope, Mr. Chairman, and then since I have two chairmen here dealing with Department of Division of Code Enforcement and Housing, I think that we should look to increase this. This would improve the quality of life of our residents, improve the health of our housing stock, which is certainly needed throughout the entire city of Cleveland.
Thank you,
So
Councilman.
I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we looked at investing more money back into this department.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, and to Director Martin, and to the Finance Director, and to Mr. Gentile. On page, well, I'm going to go back. I'll pick up where Councilman Jones touched upon. I'm going to go to page 284 under output metrics. Under number 1, and let me just preface by saying this, Mr. Chairman. This is the number 1 complaint in my office daily, building and housing code. And then close relationship is health. And then public safety is farther down, believe it or not. And I know my residents watching this know exactly what I'm talking about, because my neighborhood is being targeted by LLCs, especially in North Shore Collinwood, that are coming in and trying to buy up everything they can. But I want to go back to metrics. Code enforcement inspections, 41,120. Complaints received, 8,193. Violation notices issued, 4,136. So that would, of the actual violation notices issued, it's only 10%. Only 10% of the code enforcement inspections. Then when you look at violations issued, again, versus complaints received, that's around 50%. So what I'm trying to understand, I'm not going to belabor the point today, but I need to understand, my residents turn complaints in not for the sake of doing it or for their own health. They turn it in because they have a concern and a complaint. So I clearly don't see the correlation between complaints received, first of all, code enforcement inspections, complaints received, and actual violations issued. I would think that violations issued would be much higher than what we're seeing in the metrics. So I'm going to ask for some in-depth explanation, and maybe this ties into the number of inspections per ward. That number, violation notices issued, in my opinion, should be much higher, based on just on complaints received, okay? I'm going to jump over to page 285. Under contractual services, professional services, we went from 0 last year to 40,000 this year. Mileage, we went from 138,000 unaudited to now approximately 100,000 in mileage. And then under other contractual, for this year, there's nothing. Would somebody care to elaborate on that on page 285?
Finance Director?
So through the chair to the councilman, for professional services, we went from 0 to 40,000. I believe this question was asked earlier. This is for outside plan examiner consulting services. And then you asked about mileage going up, and that is for reimbursement dollars for property inspector travel. So we're expecting an increase there.
Okay.
And then for other contractual, this got rolled into.
There's nothing.
Through the chair to the councilman, the contracts are all going to be in the administrative section now.
Yeah, but just as a point of information here, the mileage is the same as budget 24. Budget to budget, not actual to budget, just as a point.
Yeah. Propose 100,000 increase.
Through the chair, that's for the increase in staffing.
Okay. So then let's jump over to 287 for staffing levels. Go down to the residential building inspectors. We ended last year with 18. It's being proposed for 30 this year. If we jump down to the very bottom, property maintenance inspectors, number 1, we went from 24. We budgeted 24 and 24. At the end of the year, we wound up with 3, and now there's proposal for 8. Explain the difference between property maintenance inspector 1 and the other inspectors. Who can
Residential
address
building
that?
inspector.
Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, residential building inspectors have to have a state certification to be a residential building inspector, as do building inspectors writ large. They have to have a state certification. Property maintenance inspectors are an entry-level position, and they don't have to have state certifications, but the goal is to train them to work towards that. So it's an entry-level staff that was new for building and housing last year. And bear in mind that we can be flexible between what's budgeted for each of the categories. So if we get a great crop of property maintenance inspector candidates, we can go ahead and hire them and swap it out. It's been difficult, to staff people with certifications, and so that was the point of creating the PMI category. But again, as I mentioned before, this is a classified civil service position. It's been a little bit tricky to fill and slower than we would hope.
That's the property maintenance inspector 1. That's
Correct.
it.
Correct.
So what's the best way to describe this? Is this almost like an apprenticeship? What is it?
Through the chair to the councilman, many cities and suburbs have positions of a housing inspector that doesn't require state certifications. It's typically done. It wasn't done here, and I think we do pride ourselves on having many certified staff, which is fantastic.
Okay.
But we also need a pipeline of bringing newer people in and training them up, which we are doing.
Okay. And I support that. That's why when I looked at your numbers, I would have thought, because I've heard this historically, we have a hard time getting residential building inspectors. What is the pay range for that? Can somebody tell me? And for the viewing public, what is a residential building inspector? What's the pay band?
To chair that council person, we'll get that.
Commissioner's got it.
Commissioner might
Johnny
have it
on
in
the
his
spot.
head.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, to the council, a residential building inspector starts at roughly the $22 to $23 an hour.
Okay.
And then there's a progression that allows them to grow from there. The property maintenance inspector is around 21 an hour, and then there's a ability for them to grow from there.
And so we provide, on that property maintenance inspector, we provided training. That's what I'm hearing. So that's my question is, I would think that that number 8 would be much higher if we're trying to get people in the pipeline to become inspectors.
Through the chairman to the councilman, the number's fluid. So if we get a great crop of them, we can hire them and swap them out for RBIs. So if you think about that number being very flexible between those inspector categories, we can switch it. The idea is to recruit as many of them as we can. And like I said, it's been a challenge with the classified civil service process. It's very slow and arduous to get good candidates in.
Okay. Because, again, in 2025, when I look at the city and I drive the city, and I especially look at the east side and I look at the condition that our neighborhoods are in, I can't think of anything more important than code enforcement and holding property owners accountable. Because, again, based on what I said earlier, the number of characters that I'm dealing with, it seems like from all over the world.
It is.
Which, in the past, when I looked at a property, when I came into this council and I looked up an address, it was Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and boom, or they either lived there or they lived in a nearby suburb. Now I'm dealing with, I'm dealing with people in China, France. I'm dealing with them all over the world. And here's part of our challenge. We're not sending bailiffs to China to get somebody for a court appearance because it's a misdemeanor. Or the character from Belgium that's buying up everything they can in the St. Mary's neighborhood of Collinwood Village. So I'm concerned, and I want to continue to say to the director, Mr. Chairman, I would urge you to continue in your team to look at the existing codified ordinances that we have as to where recommendations can be made to us to enhance your operation and code enforcement, especially with the LLCs. How do we pierce the corporate veil? How do we demand more accountability out of these people that own this stuff in the city of Cleveland and don't want to maintain it? Because the majority, and the people watching this at home, the majority of our housing stock is built prior to 1940 in this city. And as that property continues to age, and many of the homes in the greater Collinwood and Glenville neighborhood are already at the 100 years of age or approaching it. And I don't care how well you take care of a property, when it reaches 100 years of age, you got issues. That's the reality. So, Mr. Chairman, this is a critical department. I'll look forward to receiving the information. It's a revenue-producing department, and we need to do everything we can to augment and support revenue producing. This department produces, based on their budget and based on what the directors had provided to us earlier, there's $19 million that comes out of this area that goes to the general fund. That's a plus. $19 million plus when we look at the permits that are pulled versus the operation. So, again, we need to do everything we can, augment and move this department to the level that we need to have it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Chris Arch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, that's a great place to start. I had the number 12. So let's just make sure we're all on the same page here. The director's office cost about $5 million. Code enforcement cost about $10.5 million. Permits cost about $2 million. That gets us up to about $17.5 million in expenses for B&H. B&H brings in about $29 million, meaning there's about $11.5 million discrepancy of revenue, more revenue raised than spent by the department. Is that about right? My round numbers are pretty correct there? Through the chair.
Finance?
Through the chair to the council member, that sounds correct.
That's right. Okay, great. So through the chair, there are a lot of people in this city who want to see a revenue neutral building and housing department. In other words, they want us to put every single dollar that is raised by building and housing back into building and housing, which would be an increase of, almost $11.5 million to their annual budget. And the purpose being to do more code enforcement and to do more work with permitting and to do more work in building up our city, which has, as we all know, been trending negatively for the last couple of decades. However, building and housing, as we also all know, props up entire other departments. Entire other departments exist because of the revenue generated from building and housing that we then spend elsewhere within the budget. And we don't want to take entire other departments out of service or operation, so we send $11.5 million from building and housing into the general fund, and we use it to, it more than covers the Department of Aging, and more than covers, I think, our streets budget. I think it's more than we spend on street repavement. However, this doesn't mean that the problem doesn't still exist. So, through the chair, my questions are really, they might sound operational, but I'm trying to figure out where we can best invest in building and housing. So, I heard that property maintenance inspectors start at about $21 an hour. Through the chair to the director, do they have to start at that rate, or can they start at a higher rate if the applicant is deemed worthy of it?
Director, is that a union conversation, or go ahead?
Through the chair to the councilman, that is negotiated in the Local 100 contract.
So through the chair, did the union negotiate any wiggle room, or must they start at the exact same starting salary?
Through the chair to the councilman, it's very prescriptive in terms of where people start and how they progress.
So through the chair, there is a way for them to start above $21 an hour?
Through the chair, no.
There is not, so they must start at $21 an hour. Okay. And through the chair, then, residential building inspectors must start at 22. They cannot start higher than that either?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay. There's a $1 difference in the starting salary of a property maintenance inspector and a residential building inspector. But the property maintenance inspector doesn't have the same certifications that the residential building inspector does. So, on page 284, when we talk about the 41,000 code enforcement inspections, how many of those were conducted by property maintenance inspectors versus residential building inspectors?
Through the chair, I don't have that broken out.
Can we get an estimate?
We could try,
Can
yes.
we do that right now?
Right now, no.
Yes.
Sorry, no, probably not. It will take us time, but we'd be happy to work on that for you.
Okay, so there are 3 property maintenance inspectors currently on staff. Through the chair to the director, what is their expected output in terms of inspections? What are they expected to do as part of their job?
Through the chair to the councilman, it kind of varies by day, but if you want to just look at a basic rule of thumb, probably 1 inspection an hour at the minimum.
Okay, so assuming that they don't actually spend 8 hours in the field, is that 6 inspections a day? Through the chair?
Through the chair, it depends. It definitely depends on what they're inspecting.
Sure.
And where they're going.
So if we were to say 6 inspections, that's 30 a week. That's, I don't know, it's 300 times 5. That's 1,500 a year, maybe? 2 weeks of vacation, 1,500 a year. And so through the chair, that the 3 people in that position could be potentially doing, what did I just say, 1,500? So 4,500 inspections a year if they're all up to speed on their work. And that could potentially, through the chair, make their output roughly 1/8 of the inspections that were conducted last year?
Through the chair to the councilman, theoretically.
Theoretically, okay.
Depending.
And the reason I'm asking, Mr. Chair, is that the director said that if we had a really good batch of PMIs come through to the department, we could swap out for residential building inspectors. But through the chair, we're short 12 residential building inspectors as well. We're almost at half staff when it comes to residential building inspectors. So if we were to try to hire up property maintenance inspectors, we'd be robbing Peter to pay Paul in terms of one inspector and the other inspector.
Right.
And I worry that that's not a realistic option. Everybody in this council knows, because I've almost drove you crazy talking about it, but I have a proposal a revenue neutral proposal to put another $1 million into your department without taking away from any departments, without subtracting from any other investment in the city, and actually just a lateral move for city employees to move into your department, people who work in this field and on this, to come in as property maintenance inspectors. This would put $1 million into the budget. Through the chair to the director, how much does it cost to train up a new PMI in the state certification? Because I see on page 285 we have tuition and registration fees, and we've budgeted $12,000 for that. So how much is it to train one person to be a PMI?
Do you have that, Director?
Through the chair to the councilman, I don't have that exact figure, and it really depends. We reimburse people for taking tests if they pass them, so, often they will try and fail, and that's on them.
Okay.
And we, spend time training them, but we've never quantified it.
So through the chair, about how many people did we train last year?
7, 8 new hires.
7 or 8 through the chair?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman and Mr. Harsh, the training for the PMIs is on-the-job training. The tuition numbers that you're looking for is for continuing education for the state certified employees.
Okay.
Inspectors. So the training it comes with people with some level of understanding of buildings and whether it be through appraisal, whether it be through building maintenance or other work they've done. And then we train them how to be inspectors. That's primarily on-the-job training, so it's not, there's no direct costs to that.
So through the chair,
So Councilman, if we're going to engage, Commissioner, if you could join us at the table if we're going to engage him, just so we got him on the mic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Through the chair, are we saying on-the-job training as in it's just work done at work, or are we saying that there's a job training category in the budget that I don't see?
Through the chair to the councilman, there's not a specific line item for that, although we are being very intentional about how we're training people and retraining people around code enforcement.
Okay. So the line item for tuition and registration fees, $12,360, is for test reimbursement for people that are seeking further certification, but the training itself is actually just done on the job with a supervisor who helps teach a new person how to do their job, like most jobs.
That is correct.
Okay. So the reason I asked, Mr. Chair, is if we were to laterally transfer people from a different part of the city into building and housing, it seems like we wouldn't have to worry about too much money below the line for training, because the most that would happen on the job, we would just need to put that money above the line to cover their salary and their expenses to be onboarded in this department rather than their current department. I had, one more. So right now through the chair to the director, we have 18 residential building inspectors. We want 30, so we're down 12. We have 3 property maintenance inspectors. We want 8, so we're down 5, which means we're down 17 code enforcement inspectors. Is that through the chair? Am I doing my math right? For the most part?
Yeah, that
Through the chair,
sounds
yeah.
good.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not, okay. All right, Mr. Chair, I have a very, very big concern about the notion that we can just take from one code enforcement department to another code enforcement department. We need to ramp up this entire department. As everybody in Cleveland is acutely aware, we have an absolute crisis on our hands with lead poisoning. As everybody in Cleveland is acutely aware, it is a housing problem. As everybody in Cleveland is acutely aware, we have the solution to this problem in our hands. We just aren't delivering it. And I believe, Mr. Chair, that code enforcement is our #1 method to get that solution to the people that need help with those properties. And the best way to do that is with residential building inspectors and property maintenance inspectors. And I will be encouraging this body to embrace a lateral transfer that doesn't take money from that doesn't take money out of the budget, just moves it within the budget so that we can address this more directly. It seems that the property management inspectors are capable of doing a large number of code enforcement inspections. If the 3 that we have could roughly do 1 in 8 inspections now, imagine if we had 15, 1 per ward. Imagine how much work we could get done if we actually had people dedicated to doing the door-to-door code enforcement work in our city, and the results that could come for that for decades to come. I'm going to bring this up in reconciliation, Mr. Chair. I will be talking hopefully to all of you individually. But I see no reason not to move forward when we are so understaffed and we know that we have a hard time hiring, we have a hard time recruiting, we have a hard time onboarding, yet we've got people working in the city that could be working very effectively in this department on this effort. And they're already good in the neighborhood. They're already folks that are good with people. So a code enforcement specialist who's good with people, it seems like to me like somebody that could be put to more use in building and housing. Awesome. Thank you.
There you go, Councilman, right on time. I would just encourage folks that have specific reconciliation requests to put them in writing to staff as well as the council leadership team. So I know we've been talking about it at the table, but if you've got a specific request, make sure it's in writing. Okay, Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By the way, great job chairing so far this morning.
Well, I'm about to retire. Look who just walked in.
Oh, all right. Okay, we got this. We've talked quite a bit already about the residential building inspector positions and the property maintenance inspector positions, but I really want to make sure I'm walking away with an understanding. So still on page 287, looking at the residential building inspectors through the chair, you know, we currently have 18 and budgeted requests to go up to 30. How difficult, I mean, part of my understanding of why we created the property maintenance inspector positions is the difficulty with recruiting residential building inspectors. And it seems like this year's budget re-emphasizes residential building inspectors and to some degree de-emphasizes property maintenance inspectors. I think I understand that there's a little bit of fluidity there, but just trying to understand recruitment. They both sound like they're a bit difficult to recruit for, which, you know, help me understand a little bit better why going back, doubling down on residential building inspectors compared to property maintenance inspectors through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, you know, as stated, we've had some difficulty in recruiting the PMIs due to the classified civil service process. It's a little bit arduous, it's time consuming, it hasn't bared as much fruit as we had hoped. Conversely, we have had some success this year at attracting residential building inspectors. I think with the last iteration of the union contract paying a little bit more, we have been getting them. It also holds a little bit more money aside, right? So if we, you know, they're budgeted for more. So if we're able to get them, absolutely, we'd love to have them. We love having all certified staff, and the goal with the property maintenance inspectors is to move them into being certified staff by training them and helping them take the tests and, you know, getting them upskilled that way. So it is fluid. We can go back and forth. We can swap out one for the other if we need to. So the goal, again, is if there is a wonderful crop of property maintenance inspector candidates that are forwarded to us through the civil service process, we interview them and find them, great. We want to be able to swap out those categories so we can hire as many of them as possible. So, you know, that's really where that stands.
Thank you. And are there inherent limitations, if you will, in terms of what PMIs, property maintenance inspectors, can do? Meaning, what are they really being dispatched to do in the field? And in term, you know, where can they not continue based on not having the residential building inspector certification? What are they doing, and what can they not do? Through the chair.
Mr. Chairman and Councilwoman, that's a great question. I think there's a misunderstanding in the work that's actually performed between the residential building inspector and the property maintenance inspector. For the most part, they do the same work. It's property compliance inspections. However, a residential building inspector also has the authority under the state of Ohio to conduct inspections on new construction under the Ohio Administrative Code, new construction, remodel, permitted work. Our structure currently has both residential building inspectors and property maintenance inspectors working in code enforcement, property management, or property maintenance, as you know, as it's termed. So it's that work that they do. The residential building inspector has a heightened level of experience and understanding, so they can also do permit inspections. And the reason that we have both classifications, and as the director said, the movement is fluid, is we do not want to do two things. One, if we budgeted all for property maintenance inspectors and found residential building inspector candidates, we would break the budget because the property maintenance inspector wages are lower. Inversely, if we budgeted all residential building inspectors and then hired property maintenance inspectors, we wouldn't have places for them in the budget, and we would have to continue that. So the numbers as they sit with you know, what we're requesting, the expectation is to provide us the most opportunity in a unionized civil service environment to bring in candidates and really cast a broad net. If we can find residential building inspectors that meet those qualifications, then we hire them as residential building inspectors, which affords them more money, higher wages, and a higher classification. Short of that, if we find candidates that would excel at the property as a property maintenance inspector, we can hire them, bring them in, and afford them the opportunity to grow. So it's not a one-to-one if-or situation. They do primarily the same work.
Thank you. And I remember a year ago at this time at the budget table, we were cautiously optimistic about the PMI positions and hoping to recruit a lot more. It's interesting to watch this play out, and I understand this is representative of another pivot, right? Just trying to stay fluid and respond to conditions and recruiting. And I do appreciate Councilman Hairston asserting that we'll have an operations hearing with building and housing to dive more deeply into some of these. I do want to take my a couple remaining minutes here to tie it back to lead, and Councilman Harsh was referencing some of that. I want to come back to it was my understanding from our earlier conversation that there are two very specific positions within code enforcement related to lead. Which two positions are those, and what is their responsibility? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, as you might recall, we established the 1 to 3 unit lead compliance group. This needed to be staffed with inspectors who also have the risk assessor license to go out and assist owners of 1 to 3 family properties in understanding how to make their homes lead safe. So to that end, we brought over a residential building inspector and a building inspector who both have that cert and had previously worked in the regular rental inspection unit. So the 1 to 3 family lead unit is kind of an offshoot of the rental inspection unit, just with a hyper focus on 1 to 3 unit properties. So there are 2 of those inspectors. Ideally, we'd like more on that unit, but for now we do have 2.
And those 2 are Sheila, through the chair, Sheila Quealy-Walter, and the other is?
Rhonda Darrett, through the chair.
Rhonda Darrett. So is that, given everything, speaking of pivoting, given pivots related to lead, is 2 individuals with risk assessor licenses within that 1 to 3 unit compliance group sufficient? Do we need to recruit more? Through the chair
to the councilwoman, we would like to staff that unit up more than it is.
Is that reflected anywhere in this budget, and where would that be reflected?
Well, through the chair to the councilwoman, just generally in the whole inspection budget, how many inspectors we're trying to get. And we would like to, bring more over to assist the 1 to 3 family property owners.
Okay. I think, yeah, there are so many questions, but knowing we're keeping this limited to budget today, I will hold and look forward to further discussion as it relates to staffing for our lead activities. So, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Have Councilwoman House Jones.
Through the chair to the team here, good morning. I just had a question in general. Where are the demolition dollars don't come from general fund, or does it come from somewhere else? That's the finance.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, the line item is called Safe Routes to School, but it is general fund money that funds demolition.
Where's that at?
I'm gonna yield to the finance team.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilperson, I think in this budget, there is not a line item for that. I think at last year's supplemental, we added some demo money right at the end of last year with the intention that would be used this year. Were we at 1.5?
No,
It was 1.5 million that we added late last year through the supplemental with council's approval.
But it's not reflected in this
What page is it on?
budget.
Through the chair of the councilperson, it came out of last year's budget because it was in 2024 at the end. So in November, when we did the transfer in the supplemental, we added 1.5 million to use this year for demo. It was late in the year.
So it's encumbered?
Yes, to the chair, it's
No,
Okay.
I'm not going, well, okay, so it's, how would I say? But the allocation was in the transfer, but we do a transfer to help operations, right, in 2025 at points, but wouldn't it still need to be reflected in this budget in some form or fashion?
Through the chair of the councilperson, because they came out of 2024 funds, it's not in 2025 funds.
Okay, all right.
It's on the books in 2024, so they have 1.5 million of general fund money.
And that was the reason why I'm asking, as I look, how would that be reflected through the chair to the team here? How would demolitions be reflected in just offering the metrics? So we give different metrics for other permits issued, permit inspections in this section. That's what it just took me. I couldn't see any version of that regarding metrics. And as we indicated, we encumbered the funds last year, but then it doesn't give us a picture of what happened last year. What are we projecting to do here in 2025? And how would that be reflected as far as our team members that would work on demolitions?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, there's about 3.2 million left in the budget for safe routes to school. We do have money coming back through the ODOD grant fund that we obtained 2 rounds of. One of them we are getting reimbursed for a number of demolitions, so we expect some money to come back. The team takes down close to 500 structures in any given year, typically.
So through, just, I guess this is a request, if we can actually have a very clear outline of what that is if it's the grant, is it for a year, multi-years, just to be able to have the most updated a status of where we are. And then as we talk about in general, what we generally do, it would be helpful to just have that data information. And the reason, again, the question that I wanted to ask is, as part of the demolition contract, is there an expectation that once we demo the homes, when it comes to the reseeding, the afterwards, the aftermath of the demolition, what is the appropriate standard that we have within our demolition standards?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, we have a demolition spec that the demo contractor has to follow about grading, seeding, et cetera. So that's part of the contract that they sign when they enter into an agreement with us to do a demolition.
And through the chair to the director, I'm asking this question. At times, it does not seem like that grading and seeding afterwards is up to just up to standard at times in some neighborhoods. And again, it's just, how do we ensure that? Is it a verification? You know what I'm saying? I don't know what that looks like, and how is that reflected to ensure we have the capacity to follow through, to ensure that once we are getting rid of an eyesore, a structure that needs it, that we then are not necessarily creating more issues because the land is not up to par.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, we have dedicated demolition inspectors that go out and inspect on that permit.
Is that the 3 that's in admin budget?
They're in, I believe they're budgeted in code enforcement, but they're RBIs that go out and inspect to make sure that, one, when the demolition is underway, that they've capped the utilities correctly and that the grading and seeding has been done at the completion. And granted, we do demolitions throughout the year, and so certain times of the year, they're not going to be able to seed. They'll have to do a winter finish and then go back and do a final grade and final finish. So that is followed up on. But there are some legacy sites, where there's been some subsidence, we're aware of that, and we've been trying to go back through and make corrections as we've been able to do that.
Okay, and that would be through the chair to the team here on page 287, the residential building inspectors line would include part of the team that would do the inspections after demolition? Okay, thank you.
That's it? All right, Councilwoman Rebecca Moore.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to follow up on, I think, some important lines of questioning, particularly from my colleagues, Councilman Harsh and Councilwoman Spencer, about lead in the budget and the residential building inspectors. And I'll start out with the thesis of what I want to say, which is that, Councilman, I agree with the problem that you are laying out, but I'm not yet comfortable with the solution that you're proposing at the table. And I want to just ask some questions that I think get to my concerns. So I think what you have proposed is taking the HHI staff who are currently out of community development and moving them into being property maintenance or residential building inspectors here in the Division of Code Enforcement. Director, could I just ask you to narrate a little bit about who those HHI inspectors are and where they report for work every day? Do they come in here to City Hall through the chair?
Through the chair to the chairwoman, or I'm sorry, to the councilwoman. It's all running together now. These are folks that are funded capacity building for CDCs. They work for the CDCs. They report to the CDCs. They are not city employees.
Thank you. And if we were to move their positions within the budget book to the Division of Code Enforcement, could those individuals essentially just sign a piece of paper with the city and start reporting to Building and Housing Department through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, no, they'd have to go through the full hiring process through City Hall. They'd have to, start like any other candidate.
Thank you. And so would we have to post those positions and, essentially go through the extensive hiring process for which we have struggled to fulfill even the existing roles for PMIs? Would we have to begin a new hiring process if we were to move those people through the budget book through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that's correct.
Okay, all right. So that's certainly among the problems I see. Could you also talk a little bit about the lead work that they would be able to do? Would ODH be comfortable with these staff members essentially giving lead advice to the residents whose doors they're knocking? Would they be certified to be able to do those lead risk assessments through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, a lead risk assessment license would be needed to dispense specific advice about lead. Property maintenance inspector could dispense advice about property maintenance generally.
Okay, so those PMI positions really couldn't achieve that detailed level of lead work, that we're moving towards with the lead risk assessment through the chair to the director. Is that correct? Through
the chair to the councilwoman, no.
Thank you. Could you also talk a little bit about? Well, actually, I think I'll pause there and say, those are my key concerns. If we move these people over in the budget book, it's not transferring a position in the city in the way that it would be, for instance, when we broke out Division of Recreation from Public Works, we could just kind of transfer people over. We're going to hit the same hiring problems, and there is no guarantee that the people who are working for our CDCs will apply for these jobs and work for them within building and housing. That being said, Director, I have the same concerns that Councilman Harsh does about the level of lead risk assessments that we are getting done and the staffing levels needed to do that. And so I also want to ask you through the chair, of those two current inspectors staffed within the 1 to 3 family unit, are they currently out doing inspections, or are they working their way through the lead risk assessment backlog?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, as you know, we are behind 2 ES2 candidates. And they are reviewing reports currently, just to try to help us get through the backlog, which increased as a result of the passage of Residents First, and then further increased as a result of the passage of the executive order that the mayor put forward.
Thank you. So the staffing levels that we have in the 1 to 3 family unit are not yet getting us to the point of going out and doing lead risk assessments on properties, because we are working our way through the existing backlog here in the offices at Erie View. We're not yet out in properties in the 1 to 3 family unit. Through the chair, is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. What is your expectation about when, at your current staffing levels, you will be able to get 1 to 3 family unit inspectors out doing work in homes in Cleveland? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I think it hinges on, staffing up those 2 ES2s, which will help tremendously. Our backlog currently, and I will call Karen up to speak to it more specifically. You want to come on? And you'll have to come to the microphone.
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Oh, you have turned on.
To the chair, to the councilwoman, currently we're a little over 1,200 in our backlog, which came from, as everyone knows, a combination of the cyber attack in June, the Residents First passing, which is giving more people the need to have that lead certificate to get a valid rental registration, and the executive order in October that forced a lot of these inspectors and landlords to quickly get an inspection before it passed, which is why we have that current backlog. The 2 people that are in the 1 to 3 unit are currently reviewing reports, as well as we have myself, Victor Santillo, and William Battle also reviewing reports. We lost 1 staff member in December, right in the middle of this, so that slowed us down. But my hope is within 6 months that we have a much clearer picture and a much more handleable backlog, that we can then have these people that are in the 1 to 3 unit actually out and doing work. They do have a training curve that we need to put them on too. They're not ready right now. They haven't been in the field, even though they are risk assessors. So we have training involved with that too. I hope that answers.
It does, and I think, before I pontificate, could you clarify the ES2 position, where that is in the budget book, through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that would be director's office.
Under the director's office, so they're not actually housed within code enforcement?
Correct.
These are the environmental compliance specialists?
Correct.
And you have 1 listed as of December. Is that the person who separated from the city, so we now have 2 vacant positions? Or do you just have 1 additional vacant position here listed in the budget
Through the
book?
chair, we have 2. Because Victor Santillo was promoted out of an ES3 position, which we converted to an ES2.
Okay. And is there a reason why those people are housed within the director's office as opposed to code enforcement, given that they're working daily with the code enforcement staff?
Through the chair, not really. There's no real rhyme or reason to that.
Okay.
Just to be honest.
Well, I appreciate the honesty, and I will take it in turn. Director, I know you will be the first person to say that we are not yet happy with how we are the progress we are making on lead. Your staff are making progress. They have opened the portal after this long journey to get there to try to keep things moving, but it is not yet working. It is not yet working, and we have to fix this problem both within the budget and operationally, and we have to address it legislatively, which might require amendments to our legislation. I personally believe that you need additional staffing within the 1 to 3 family unit. I believe that you need to be out conducting inspections sooner than 6 months. That is not an acceptable answer to me, in part because the goal of the 1 to 3 family unit was to create, what we never had was we never had a wraparound approach to getting through this program. We never had somebody who could manage the grants, the incentives, the lead risk assessment, getting the certificate. And the thing that you have pitched me on, Director, and that I am bought into is that the 1 to 3 family unit is an in-house way to get that work done, connected to the sources of funding that we have available. The sources of funding we have available we need to get them out the door. It is offensive to me and continues to be offensive to me that we have millions of dollars dedicated to improving our housing stock, and they are sitting in a bank account at Key Tower rather than out in the streets fixing our homes. And until we are actually working hands-on with property owners, getting that money out the door, we will continue to fail. We need this unit to work. We need the CDCs are getting lead, we're getting all these pieces in place. We're also getting them on staff lead risk assessors. That's another reason that I haven't been in support of changing the CDC approach, because we put some of our ARPA money into hiring 7 lead risk assessors who will be housed at our CDCs, who will also do this same type of hands-on wraparound approach. And we're just at the point of getting those job postings up and ready to go. That is my 10 minutes, but here's what I'll conclude by saying. I support amendments that staff up your 1 to 3 family unit. I will be happy to propose those. I do not think we need to pull from CD to make that happen, essentially because I just think we'll lose those staff members at the CDCs rather than actually getting the lead work that we need done. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilwoman, did you want to go back on the list?
I'm okay for right now. I don't know
like
if
you
the
had
councilman
more.
wants to go. We're going to have a bit of a back and forth.
And I know you are very, I know this is an important topic, and I know you're very knowledgeable of it, so that's why I want to make sure if you need more time, come back.
I might get on.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Jenny Spencer.
Thanks. I did ask to come back on just for a moment here. I think these are such important discussions, and I think council has a desire to be educated, especially as these staffing structures and teams are being built and structured, and new plans are being made. So I know that Councilman Harrison has suggested a hearing for building and housing. I'm going to put it out there. I don't know if it's a joint building and housing and health hearing. There was a health hearing on lead last fall. I think we need it again. I think knowing that there are new positions at CDCs, this shift to a lead risk assessment model as opposed to clearance exam model, understanding the staffing within building and housing. I think we can't, this is such an important issue that we all lean really heavily on Councilman Moore to be our lead expert, and then Councilman Harsh for his background. And I think we as a body need to really have a grasp and a command of this information. So that's what I would request, either adding to the hearing already planned, or a specific one again about lead, knowing how urgent it is, and knowing that the changes are underway as we speak. I did have one more follow-up question about that, which is, this whole question of the lead, the risk assessor license, and only 2 people have it currently in the 1 to 3 unit compliance team. Is that a license that would be easy enough for a PMI to obtain? Is there a reason? Is that part of their professional development through the chair?
The chair to the councilwoman, it could be. They could train for it. We do have everyone in our rental inspection unit, the one that is more focused on 4 family and above, has a lead risk assessment license. So we have a number of certified staff. It's hard to spare them from the rental unit, though, because they're very, busy with complaints and going out. But yeah, it's possible.
Okay. And then I really should have asked this question before, so I'll ask it now, zooming out again. With residents first, how is this overall staffing? Where would you say residents first is most reflected in this proposed staffing level? Where are we seeing changes that were advocated for and desired through residents first? How is that being reflected in this staffing and budget? Through the
chair to the councilwoman, certainly through inspection staff. That's critical. We've added additional support staff and a new structure for support staff as well to better support inspectors spending more of their time in the field and less time doing desk work. So that was also a bit of a restructure in the Division of Code Enforcement. As you all know, we've pretty much completely restructured the Division of Code Enforcement just to be more efficient that way.
And then what about some of the stuff like the just compliance with the law vis-a-vis vacant property registry, local agent in charge, some of those things that are supposed to happen through an online process?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, you'll see a lot of that in the director's office with records room staff. So records room had additional capacity given to it for that purpose.
Okay. All right. Always learning a lot and looking forward to further conversation. Thank you.
Councilman Chris Harsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 5 minutes when we come back on? Okay.
This is an important topic.
So, Mr. Chair, let me just start this way. I absolutely respect the amount of authority there is on lead in this room. Councilwoman Moore knows more about lead than most people in this city. Ms. Detmer here knows more about lead than most people in the city. And the Director O'Toole knows more about lead than most people in this city. And we have a lot of authority and understanding of lead. And I will say that lead is pretty much a closed science. This is not astrophysics. We're not still learning about lead. We know everything there is to know about lead. So let's get into the guts of it. First off, before that, the property maintenance inspectors last year were part of the Resident First plan to do point of sale inspection for exterior. Through the chair to the director, how many point of sale inspections were conducted last year?
Through the chair to the councilman, we have been doing quite a few of them per week, and I don't have it completely quantified, but since we launched the vacant building, it's been pretty active.
Okay, so through the chair, to the director, how long does it take civil service and the various hiring apparatuses in Cleveland, when you've got a candidate that comes to your office and you say, we want to hire this person, how long does it take to onboard them?
Through the chair to the councilman, it depends what you're talking about.
How long does it take for somebody that you want to hire to actually show up to work?
It varies. Is it a classified civil service position where we have to have referred candidates?
What's the range through the chair?
I mean, that can be several months.
Several months. So if we were to move the money right now at the end of February and tell people that their contract is up at the end of June, they've got 4 months to onboard into building and housing. Through the chair, do you think 4 months is long enough for the city of Cleveland to take people who already have some kind of city hall clearance to transfer them into your department, assuming that they can pass their civil service?
Through the chair to the councilman, there's so much complexity to what you're proposing. And we've had some back and forth on it.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So then what we're doing is we're throwing the white flag. We're giving up. We're saying we can't hire people. Let's just not worry about it. It can't happen. That to me is insanity. We have a problem hiring people in this city, and we know it. We just had civil service here yesterday where we said, we've doubled your budget. You have twice as many people in civil service as you did a couple of years ago, right? We have been talking about HR and civil service as long as I've been at this table, and we're sitting here telling you that we got 12 people that we can move from one department to another, and we can't actually think we can onboard them in 4 months through the chair to the director. Am I reading this correctly?
Through the chair to the councilman, I don't believe that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so 4 months is enough time to onboard somebody who already has some kind of city hall pass. I've seen these people come into the room. They have some kind of security clearance at least. I know they don't work for the city, but they work for the CDCs and they're contracted through the city. They've got some kind of city hall clearance. We've got them started down that road. So 4 months should be enough time to onboard 12 people. Through the chair to the director, do you think lead risk assessments are going to, by themselves, make this city more safe for the number of children who are lead poisoned?
Through the chair to the councilman, there's complexity in what you're saying there as well. Is that going to solve it? I think a lot of it is going to come down to having adequate resources to renovate homes.
Correct. So through the chair, we know that risk assessments themselves are not going to actually lower lead poisoning cases in the city of Cleveland because the lead risk assessment, by the time we find lead in the house, kids are already poisoned, right? What we're trying to do is clean houses proactively so the kids don't get poisoned. And as a lead risk assessor and a lead clearance examiner who's done dozens of these, I can tell you there is no functional difference between the two. The lead risk assessment just costs more and there's fewer people to do it. The number of dust wipes you take does not determine whether or not a child is poisoned. You can walk into a house and fail it on a visual exam within 5 minutes. And if a house fails the visual exam within 5 minutes, the next conversation needs to be whether or not you pay me for that 5 minutes to fail you, or if we have a conversation about how to make a home lead safe. That was the whole point of doing clearance exams. That was the whole point of doing dust wipes, was just a good faith effort to demonstrate that the work was actually done. Because you can fail the visual exam like that.
One cracked piece of paint, one chip, one flake, one dust, anything like that fails the visual exam instantly. Through the chair to the director, is that correct?
Through the chair to the councilman, I agree with your thought of it can fail immediately. The issue has been in the past with the 21 revoked now certificates were all clearances where they did not fail the visual where they should have.
Right. So through the chair, what happens here is when you walk in and they fail visually, doesn't take long to fail. Fails in a couple of minutes because you can see the problems. It's a failed exam. What happens is when they pass the visual and then they pass the dust wipes and the samples are collected and sent off to the lab and the lab comes back and says there's a below a threshold, cool. On that day, for that hour, that one time, that unit was lead safe. The very next day, that unit can be an absolute lead hazard. All you gotta do is punch one hole in the wall, right? All you gotta do is open the window and let some lead dust come in from your neighbor's house. Right. Immediately that window is going to fail the exam the very next day. Lead clearance exams and lead risk assessments don't make homes lead safe. They are a good faith demonstration that there is an attempt to make that home lead safe. And that's why I'm so frustrated by this conversation about lead risk assessments and lead clearance exams. Those don't make homes safe. They just demonstrate that on that day that home was safe. What makes homes safe is the conversation we have with people about why they need to wipe down their windowsills every single day, about why they need to make sure that there are no cracks, and about getting them the resources that Councilwoman Moore so correctly points out. We have in abundance. $100 million has been dedicated to this, and all we have to do is go in and fix some walls, replace some windows, start cleaning houses, and that's what prevents kids from getting lead poisoned. And I think property management inspectors that work for the city, that are tasked with canvassing this city, can do that more effectively than deciding whether or not to have lead risk assessments or lead clearance exams. And I think that it is beyond insanity for us to look at people that care about their community and aren't terribly effective and think that we couldn't put them in a more effective work inside the city of Cleveland to get them more productive in helping to make this city clean and safe. That was 6.5 minutes. I really apologize for going over.
I think you're right. All right, hold on one second. Is that a question or is that just your?
Mr. Chair, I stand firm we should transfer $1 million from community development into code enforcement. It ups their budget from $7 million to $8 million. It gives them more wiggle room to hire more people, and it gives them a great crop of people that are wonderful people that can do this work. They've got some experience in the field. They can be trained up on the job. They could maybe be our next round of building and housing inspectors, which we're short of 12 as well.
So just how we're going to handle that, just so that everybody's aware, that is going to be a conversation that will happen with the chair. So I know he's listening. He's right next to you, can't help but hear.
All right.
So the chair will entertain that discussion. You and Councilwoman Moore have probably more knowledge about lead than most people on council. All I'd ask is that at the end of the day, this council is going to make a sound decision based on the debate. Because I think if I'm listening and hearing this right, it's probably half and half. Half that believes that your position is one way and half that believe that they should stay in CD. I'm going to work closely with the chair to entertain what recommendation we make, okay? And then what we'll do is at the end of the day, we'll figure that out during reconciliation, but that's a conversation I want y'all to have with the chair because I'm taking recommendations through the chair. Before I go to Councilwoman Spencer, yes, sir. Mr.
Yeah, through the chair, the councilperson, I think you probably already know this, but these are on, I think right now on block grant funding through CD, so they're not actually on the general fund budget.
So
I
thought they were general, so they're not general.
No,
because
they're
that
not
changes the
important.
whole conversation.
There are general funds.
That's what I thought.
There are general funded.
They were always general, yeah.
Okay.
So
All right.
we'll look at that.
So it's
That'll be a
global.
conversation. I'll work with the chair, and we'll come up with probably a straw poll of council. So anybody that wants to make a recommendation on that, I really encourage you guys to really have an in-depth conversation with Councilman Harsh and Councilwoman Moore so that we can understand where everybody is making recommendations. I think both of those two have done more around lead than anybody. So I really am going to ask if those two can really inform the discussion as we consider where we want to go. Is that fair? Is that fair to everybody? Okay? Councilman McCormick, I'm sorry,
quick point.
Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mayor.
Council, I got you, I'm coming right
Just-
back.
just
I got everybody.
Just a
Relax.
quick point, and it
Councilman
is
Spencer.
clarification in this discussion. So Councilman, through the chair, or Councilman Harsh, are you saying that these positions should do lead risk assessments? Or
No.
are you saying that exterior inspections inherently will get us closer to lead-safe outcomes?
Councilman Harsh
chair-
for clarification.
Through the chair.
Through the chair, Councilwoman Spencer, the latter.
Okay.
I know that they can't do lead risk assessments. I'm arguing that that's not even necessary. They can talk about home maintenance.
Okay. So it's more around bringing them into the city to talk about maintenance and education to prevent lead poisoning, as opposed to utilizing them to talk about lead risk assessment or lead clearance exams. And that's the debate that we'll have amongst ourselves, because then we'll make a recommendation to the mayor's office through reconciliation. Councilman McCormick.
Point of clarification on the budget, as from a historical perspective, Mr. Chairman, these roles used to be funded by CDBG. HUD came down and said you can't use it for that purpose, which is why they now live in the general fund.
And I believe Anthony Brancatelli was the council person who really used to be like Harsh and Mara, who understood this stuff on a whole nother level, that really made that recommendation, and that's where we moved to that. But we want to get the best use out of them for the taxpayer dollars. We'll have that debate amongst ourselves and make a recommendation to you. Fair? And I do want you to make sure you inform it, Director, so I might even try to have a little small powwow so that we can have a conversation together, but please proceed.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to this conversation, my concern is pretty grave about our capacity of our CDCs, which I consider vital to our neighbors, our neighborhoods, and neighborhood stabilization. We, in building and housing, have been working really closely with CDCs over the past couple of years, meeting with them monthly to get intel about what's really happening on the ground and what's truly the critical priorities, as well as we do with council offices. My fear in taking away capacity from them, especially in a climate where we don't know what's going to happen with CDBG, could be very detrimental to the CDCs generally. So I just want to put that out there, because that's on my mind. And to the other point, and I've made this point repeatedly, we can't move them from the CDC to the city without hiring them. They're not portable that way. So I do want to go on the record as saying these are my grave concerns about this.
Totally understand, Director, and that's the reason why we're going to have that conversation in partnership, okay? All right, thank you.
I'll get on briefly.
I apologize, I bring you back, Councilman Moore. I have Councilman Kevin Conwell, and then I have Councilman Joe Jones, and then I have you, okay? Because I do want to spend some time, I want you to follow up. Councilman Conwell, and then
You know
Councilman
what, I don't have
Jones.
anything to say right now. You said, you narrated, Mr. Chair, what I was going to narrate. I don't want to be redundant. So we will meet on this issue, and with Rebecca, she's always in my ear about it, Rebecca Moore, as well as Chris Harsh. But we need to bring someone from your office, O'Toole, also when we talk, so we can have expert opinions at the table. And that's where I'm at. We'll talk offline. But I am not happy. I do have to say this. I always got to say something. We can give them all the resources in the world, and I've seen that working with these different departments, but will they execute? Will they do what need to be done? You could put $1 million over there. You could put equipment, supplies. It's about execution. Will they execute? We could pass legislation, and really the council members, Rebecca Moore, we can't manage them. We just can't manage them. We can put the legislation, but it has to be that culture and the people will to execute. Because we're not there every day, from day to day. We're mad about it. We're frustrated about it. We're disappointed through the chair, Chris Harsh, Rebecca Moore, and all of us. But we can't, it's the culture. And I don't know where the money do it. I just don't know, Will. But I'm not giving up. I'm just saying for what I've seen, and gotta work through it. So we'll move forward.
All right. Councilman Joe Jones, you're coming back on the list. And then Councilwoman Rebecca Moore, and then we'll move to the next point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to be as brief as I possibly can. Some of this information has already been touched upon earlier. Mike Polinsky brought out some great points. Kerry McCormick had some great thoughts. And I just think Chris Harsh killed it. And when we look at our inspections here, I think that we start talking about how much these people get paid. So your average inspector, Mr. Chairman, to the director, Ms. Martin, gets paid what when they're starting out with the certifications?
Do we have the pay band average for the average inspector, and which inspector are you looking for?
Well, you have to enter in, I presume, at certain
Could
stages.
you repeat? I think you gave the answer.
And I want to say, earlier he stated something like $21.
That's what they said. They're about to
But I
get
wasn't for sure if it's with the classification of having certificates, would they also start at 21?
Mrs. Gallagher, did you have how much is it? Councilman Jones, could you clarify your question?
Yeah, the
He's
question
asking for
is-
how much is the average pay salary for the inspector
That has certificates
that has certificates?
from the state. Because some of them, Mrs. Martin explained, doesn't necessarily have the certificates, but it helps them get started and transition into. And then there are those who have the certificates. I don't know what that is.
Through the chair to the councilman, if you're talking about a residential building inspector, I think the starting rate's around $22, which would be $45,760 annually.
Okay, so then, if you have an inspector, Mr. Chairman, and I think the residential building inspectors are the ones who do both residential as well as commercial, is that correct? Do the residential building inspectors also do commercial work too? Mr. Chairman, to the director.
Through the chairman to the councilman, currently, the bulk of the RBIs are doing code enforcement work. So we've kind of demarcated, putting the RBIs and the PMIs doing code enforcement, and the building inspectors doing permit work for the most part. I'm certainly, Tom Spanover can expound on that.
Because then this raises some further questions in terms of salaries. And I don't think that, since I've been here, I guess I presumed what I thought people were getting paid, and until I heard the figure $21 an hour, so it kind of like hit me in the gut. But on the average pay for a person who's classified, who has all their certificates to do inspections, how much do they start out with?
So, Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, there is, as stated, as a residential building inspector, they start out around $23 an hour. We have a progression where with further certificates, they can grow upwards in the high 20s and through time and more certifications.
So if I'm a building housing inspector, I start out with, say, $23 an hour, and I'm there for, 5 years or 6 years, how much would I be looking at making an hour, an annual?
So in 6 years, you would increase through step process. These are fuzzy numbers. I apologize, I don't have them. Approximately an additional $3 an hour. If you follow our progression system where you test for more certifications, you could be in I believe it's the 27, 28 or higher range.
So in about 5 years, I'll
with
be making
initiative,
27,
with
28.
initiative, you can grow in progressions.
So Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm concerned about now the pay that we're paying our inspectors. Because sometimes you get what you pay for. And if we have been, and I hadn't looked at this, so this is my, looking at how much they get paid. I presumed that inspectors who are working for the city of Cleveland, on average, would be at the 60,000 mark plus.
So, Councilman, as the director noted earlier too, that's all negotiated by the union, and she noted that they are going to be re-engaging the union.
I'm aware of that.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is that, we're not paying our inspectors. And so it's like that shines a whole new light on our city in terms of what we pay our men and women to do the work. So it just goes back to the same argument that I've been saying here at the table for the longest. And I think Chris Harsh brought it out when he made the comment that, hey, the building and housing is making money for the city of Cleveland. They are generating revenues. And so I think that, to my colleague Conwell, that they should get paid more money. That we should be paying our inspectors because, I mean, Harsh's argument is probably one of the most potent, powerful arguments over the table that I've heard in quite some time since the days of Fannie Lewis. And I just think that, Mr. Chairman, when we go into reconciliation, that we look at a percentage of what this department earns should go back into this department.
So two things,
because
Councilman, if I can respond, please, because you've been going. I want to respond, if I could.
If I can,
just no, because it's important what you're saying, and
Okay.
I want to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thought the same thing in past years. What I learned is, by law, you can't do that because what that would be called is an unvoted tax. So you can't have departments that are non-enterprise departments that just raise money that goes right back into their departments. Former Director O'Leary is one who helped educate me on that, as well as Ayanna Blue Donald, because I used to think as well, if we raise fees and that money could go back into building and housing, then we could actually beef up that department and help people get more salaries. But it's something called an unvoted tax that you can't, it has to go into the general fund. You can't have these departments that just feed off of their own fees. So I just want to make sure that you understand that's why you can't do that. The second thing is that you cannot, they have bargaining units, so you can't just go and start raising salaries. You got other things that you have to have in consideration. So just as you having those conversations, I just want to make sure we clarify that. Would you, Councilman Jones,
yes,
would you
sir.
allow Councilman Conwell a point?
I would absolutely.
Councilman
allow
Conwell, you have a point.
Conwell.
Thank you, Councilman.
On that point.
Joe Jones, on this point. So let's say you raised the fees, whatever the case may be, it went into the general fund. Could the money, let's say you do a fund transfer for other equipment and supplies, because sometimes it's not always money, but people need equipment, they need supplies, they need those kind of things, so they're able to do their jobs. So let's say we raise the fees and we create a fund to do that. Could you do that?
It may be possible, but that's something that we would have to look at with the finance department and the law department. I just know that this has been an age-old conversation about if building and housing could put their money back into their department because they generate funds. And that has always been a firm no, because by law, you can't have an unvoted tax. Okay? Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that clarification. But nevertheless, we need to put more money into the department, and we need to increase our salaries. I mean, this is decisions we can make here as lawmakers at the table, and just bringing out the revenues. And it's not something I would, and just for clarification, I wasn't stating that we should raise fees and tax. I wasn't looking at it that way. What I was looking at is that they generate revenue. Those revenues, in the argument of Chris Harsh, which I have argued years past, goes to fund other departments. But this department is, and I don't mean any disrespect to the men and women who do the work, is not meeting the requirements that our citizens want to see happen in the neighborhoods. And so, because we have a population loss, because we have outside investors coming in and poaching our market, because every time I turn around, I got citizens calling me talking about, I've been emailed, I've been texted to sell my property because we're being inundated by LLCs on a constant level, weekly level, individual level, citizen level, in such a way that of the likes I have never seen before since being here in this city, that this department is a critical piece of improving our housing health stock, improving our situations where citizens
Councilman, do you have a
seeing the
budget
work
question?
get done. And so my suggestion, Mr. Chairman, when we go into reconciliation, would be that we look at ways and means to boost this department up and give it the tools it's necessary needs
Point
so
taken.
that we can have an efficient
Point taken.
operation.
This policy team, we'll have that question, we'll discuss that. And I'll tell people the direction that I want to go with this, because this seems like a sticking point, and I have an idea of how we want to try to have a discussion around this.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilwoman,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. And I want to acknowledge everybody on both sides of the table. Please acknowledge all of the people in their professional titles. because we really want to make sure that we keep decorum at all times, okay? Councilwoman Rebecca Morrow.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate the conversation today and your and the openness to hearing all the different sides of it. I think if I want to, just thinking about how to kind of like put a point on it, I think what I would encourage this council to do is decide what we want to accomplish with the changes to the budget book. Do we want to accomplish additional exterior inspections in the city? Do we want to remove these positions within CDCs? Or do we want to get additional lead work done? And if what we want to do is get additional lead work done, we need to tackle that in the veins that we have available to us. And PMIs are not the way to do that. So if a PMI, the property maintenance inspector, the exterior maintenance inspectors, they are not able to do that type of wraparound investment, hand-holding with landlords to get money out the door to. And I want to say, like, what we are increasingly focusing on within the lead world is the highest risk components within a property. We know that it's the windows that poison kids. We know it's the doors that poison kids. We know it's the porches that poison kids. And we do spend a lot of time talking about chipped and peeling paint on walls, but the reality is that that's not what's poisoning the kids. It's those movable components, and then it's those porches that see the sort of degradation from the elements, and that kids are crawling over. And so focusing on those key elements that really put the kids at highest risk, if that is what we want to accomplish, let's move money around in the budget book to make that happen. But I worry that the proposal to move the money from CD to building and housing confuses it. And let's also be clear that this is not a one-to-one transfer of staff. There is no reason to believe that the people who currently report to work at our friendly neighborhood CDCs with small staffing and flexible hours want to come work for the city of Cleveland, come report at Erie View. We might just get caught in the same hiring issues that we've had up until now. So as we resolve this, I think we have a shared sense of the problem, and let's make sure that we get to the solution that actually tackles those problems.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Here's my recommendation, and this is what I would like to request, if I could. So hear me out. This is a very important topic. This is something that I really want to strongly consider. I am going to ask if Councilwoman Moore and Councilman Harsh can have a sidebar conversation with Director Martin, because she is going to be responsible for whatever the outcome of whatever we do. I don't want to just do something and then Director Martin feels she doesn't have the capacity or the ability to do. Okay? So we need to make sure we include the director. I would ask if you guys could try to take a couple of minutes, have a conversation with the chair, who is Anthony Hairston. Those recommendations need to come through the chair. And then when we make reconciliation, that'll be either something that the leadership team, myself, Councilman McCormick, and Councilwoman Santana will give thumbs up or thumbs down. And that's how we'll work that process, so that we can have a more involved discussion and really outline everybody's position. But I want to make sure we include the director, because this cannot be done unless she actually helps with the process. Director, is that okay? If you don't mind,
Yes.
I just really want to,
Yes,
I want
Mr.
to make
Chair.
sure we include you in the conversation, because it doesn't work unless you feel like you can implement it, okay?
Thank you.
All right. That is all the code enforcement. Any other thing? Okay. Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted a point of personal privilege. I want to commend this conversation. I thought this was a really healthy, policy-based discussion at the table. So I just wanted to shout that out to the members of the table. And Mr. Chairman, I thought this was a really good, productive dialogue.
Absolutely. Democracy in action. And I've learned to delegate because, like I said, Councilman Harsh and Councilwoman Moore know far more about lead than I probably do. So I'm going to allow the people that understand it better to work with the director to come up with a recommendation that we feel is best for the citizens of the city. Okay? All right. Thank you. We'll move on now to Division of Construction Permitting. Ms. Saban?
Page 288, Division of Construction Permitting. Commissioner Naveed Hussain. Page 289, Salaries and Wages, 2024 unaudited, $1,236,725. 2025 budgeted, $1,340,549. Total expenditures, 2024 unaudited, $1,690,280. 2025 budgeted, $1,943,236. And page 290, number of employees, December of 2024, 16, budgeted 2025, 20, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Finance Director?
Through the chair to the committee, we have no comments. We're open for questions.
Thank you. Director Martin, did you want to have anything to start out with?
Through the chair, I just want to stress that work is continually ongoing to reform the construction permitting process citywide, which encompasses many more departments than just building and housing. So I'm happy to report that by this summer, the customer should see a very different look and feel when applying for permits in the city. So we're pleased with the work and the way it's progressing. It's been a long and slow process, but it's going well.
Thank you. Just a couple of things, and I want to start by saying this is probably one of the biggest pushbacks I get, and I know that a lot. I know this has always been a long-term conversation. How did the conversation end? Is my understanding that you and a few corporate leaders and other people in the industry have met in order to talk about how your processes work, and then EY also was supposed to look at your process mapping. Did those investments that we helped make work, or did they yield any programmatic results or whatever?
Mr. Chairman, we worked with a consulting company called Baker Tilly. They developed 39 recommendations, and we're implementing those recommendations now. Many of them are very much technology-based, such as, integrating a different version of Acela, kind of reforming Acela, allowing Acela to work between departments where it never did before. So planning is now going to have an Acela record. MoCap is going to have an Acela record. We're implementing something called ePermit Hub to allow for more streamlined review of construction permitting documents. So yes, all of that work and meeting with stakeholders, both large and small, to hear what the feedback is, was a very critical part of the process, as well as process mapping of all various steps that, we filled walls with process maps. And I know that CBO Vanover could go into exhaustive detail because staff are spending scores and scores of hours on this still, to get this right for the residents of Cleveland and the stakeholders.
Thank you. That's great to hear, because I know a lot of these guys complain about the time it takes and everything else. And just wonder, have you seen it decrease, the time decrease since that has been in place?
So Mr. Chairman, I failed to mention and want to mention the fact that we have hired the first ever customer experience manager for the Department of Building and Housing. And one of his main tasks is making sure that nothing ever gets stuck in the process. And so we have counterparts to him in MoCap and also planning, meeting regularly, looking at metrics, looking at how long things are taking in the system, finding if things have been stuck, why they're stuck, troubleshooting that. And so that work's been ongoing. And I will defer to CBO Vanover if he has anything he'd like to add about it, because he's been so involved.
He said, I'd rather not. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. It's not operational, but if he wants to, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just to reiterate what the director said, one of the most exciting portions of this entire exercise is that we have been able to get everybody in the development process reading from the same sheet of music. We always say that the complexity of the process is inherent to the complexity of the legislation. And in our city, for 228 years, the fine members of this body have been passing laws around zoning and planning and development. And we have, it's taken a long time because it is hard. It is hard to do, but all of the parties involved will be in the same platform along the same fish stream, so that everything is not only transparent to the public, but it is predictable and it is, it is open so that we can measure it.
Okay, that's great news. Thank you. Real quick, construction permit value. It looked like permits in 2024 were down, but the permit value seemed to almost double. Is that because of the bedrock permits and some of the other big ticket permits that we started pulling in, or what is that for? What does that
Mr.
do to-
Chairman, point of correction. So when the budget book was submitted, our open data portal was reporting the numbers that you see in the budget book. However, the total for commercial permitting for 2024 is $2.6 million. We realized that there was a error, a keystroke error. Acela does not take a 0.00 decimal point approach. So we had two admins who keyed a couple things wrong, and it threw things out of whack. So we've developed a process of auditing all of the numbers. So all of Building and Housing's figures are now on the open data portal for the public to consume. So that means it's even more pressing that we audit it throughout the year. So now we have a monthly audit. So we catch any keystroke errors that might occur. And so we caught them. We have corrected them on the open data portal. So I want to point that out. So yes, values are up. Total number of permits is lower, and you're correct. There's a lot of larger jobs that are going on out there that are, reflected in those totals. And just something to bear in mind about valuation, it's a self-reported figure. So the company pulling the permit is reporting what the valuation of construction is. So I want to put that out there too, just for a point of clarification.
So just for clarification, that 3.26 billion in construction value is really 2.6 billion.
Correct, sir.
2.6 million?
Why? No,
$2.6 billion.
it's the value of the permits, not the actual cost that we're bringing.
No, it's the valuation of construction permitting.
Right.
So it's let me make sure we're all on the
Right,
same
please.
page. It's the self-disclosed valuation of that job to that person who's pulling the permit. Well, this is a $1 million job.
Right.
This is a $2 million job. This is, and that's,
So if I'm Bedrock, I come to you and I pull the permit and I say I'm gonna have a $1 million or $1 billion job or whatever else like that, then that's just
the
what you're
figure
reporting.
that is reported.
So
Yes.
my point is, why didn't we get a green sheet for this as opposed to this?
Through the chair to the councilperson, this was the number that was provided, and up until right now, we didn't know this was a different number, so
Okay.
we will have to green sheet this, and we will do that now.
Well, it's good that the public knows that it's an open
Yes.
portal, but it's important for us to make sure we had a green sheet as we look at these.
Yeah,
kind
we
of
will
things.
correct this.
So this was very, Council President, this was very recent that we found this error. So obviously, it'll have to be changed. But again, with our open data, we're very careful at auditing it. We did find an error from the time the budget book was put together versus now. So I just wanted to put that out there to be clear.
And just for the council members and the listening public, the reason that this is important is because this is how we make more revenue for the city. So this kind of revenue that comes in, even though everybody says this is money going to develop downtown and these big projects, well, it actually goes to the general revenue fund, which actually helps pay for the services that the people need in the community. So make people understand that.
There is, as a point of clarification, though, this is just the self-disclosed
got you.
valuation of the job. It doesn't affect the revenue we brought
The
in.
revenue is
or-
different. No,
It's
I got
all,
you.
yeah.
I got you. And just speaking of revenue, I just wanted to go into that briefly. Where do we have, how much revenue did we bring in last year for this? Do we have a number? Do we have a number of how much revenue? Or where would that be reflected?
Through the chair of the councilperson, all the revenue, I believe, is on page 282, which is in the director's office.
282 in the director's office?
Through the chair, the revenue is reflected in the director's office.
So what is the total revenue? Let me go to 282.
Yes.
What is the
282.
total revenue?
It's a little over 20, almost 30 million, just a little bit under 30.
So 30 million. So reason that I'm asking that question is because I'm trying to calculate this right. So with $2.6 billion in valuation estimated, I know these are not actual static numbers, but with 2.6 billion valuation, we were able to pull in close to 30 million in revenue.
Correct. Council President and Mr. Chairman, let me just say that there's also some additional permit types outside of commercial permits. There's elevator, lifts, residential, bringing us to a total of $2.8 billion for 2024 if you look at all of the permit types.
Okay.
Construction permitting for commercial projects is where we found the two keystroke errors that led to our issue.
Okay.
which were decimal point error.
Do you project what you anticipate coming in, or do you just go off of what you actually receive? Or do you look at like 2025, you project you're going to get how much revenue?
Mr. Chairman, we don't do traditional projections because it is driven by the market. To answer the question that you asked, much of the increase was due to the 3 large projects in Ward 6 for the Cleveland Clinic. Much of the bedrock work has not made it through to the point of paying for their permit fees. But we also have large-scale multifamily construction in almost every neighborhood in the city. So doing projections, we have a general idea based on what people are talking about, but nothing's real till it's real. So doing projections as we would with a private sector forecast is difficult because there's many projects that get talked about and printed about that never happen.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification and understanding. Councilman Kerry McCormick, Councilman Kevin Conwell, Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Commissioner Hussein and Vanover for their work on this and all the staff. I know sometimes it's not easy. It's necessary and good, but not easy to say we got to redo the way we do things, right? In life, for any human being. So appreciate the willingness and the folks leaning into this work. So I wanted to acknowledge them for that. Specific to the budget, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I asked the same question of the head of recreation, right? About investing in her department. And same question to you, Director. There is very little in professional services here. We are not increasing headcount. This is a critical component in your department. Does this budget allow for the commissioners involved as well as you to complete this kind of overhaul of processes, both from a headcount perspective as well as any necessary professional services?
So, Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I believe it does. We have, with bringing in other departments, understanding that the permit process is a string among many departments, there's the staffing in planning and the staffing that is increased in zoning. Capital projects has also, just a quick shout out, they've done right of way. They've done a lot of heavy lift with this too. They've all increased persons within their respective divisions and departments to also hedge up this. Once we get through the process and we start putting all the pieces together, towards the latter part of the year when we really know, we'll know what we don't know. But I believe for the Department of Building and Housing, this specific budget does support the work that we're doing.
Thank you. And Chair to the Director or Commissioner, the 3 vacant master plan examiner, that seems problematic, how important those roles are. Where are we at in filling these vacancies on page 290?
Through the chair to the councilman, very happy to report we have a master plans examiner who has accepted the position and will
Hooray.
be starting soon.
So we're down to
happy
2
hear that.
vacancies now.
We also have a category pending through civil service we've been asking for, which is a commercial plan examiner, which is kind of a mid-step between a residential and a master plans examiner, which we think is going to open up more candidate pool. But we're also paying a little bit more to master plans examiners, making it a bit more attractive. We're also willing to do a flexible arrangement. So if there's 2 of them that want to do a job share, for instance, we're quite open to that as well.
And Chair to the Director, how long has that request been into civil service?
Mr. Chairman, to the councilman, I believe it was heard at civil service in December, and my understanding is that they're waiting for a review from Local 100.
Okay.
On that, because it is a non-bargaining unit position as the master plans examiner is, and the qualifications are such that it is a non-bargaining unit position. But my understanding through civil service is that they're waiting for an approval from Local 100, and I don't know where that stands since.
So why would
December.
they need approval for Local 100, Chair to the Commissioner, if it's a non-bargaining?
I would defer that question to civil service. That's just what I was told.
Okay, I want to make sure that we're getting these positions filled, the vacancies here, because they're critical, obviously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Conwell.
No, I want to move forward. The Director O'Toole Director O'Toole answered everything, but I do want to see your process mapping, and I can't say this about her. I stop by and visit her anytime, or I'll call you at any time. Isn't that true?
That's so true.
Yes, if
Through
I
the
need
chair.
any questions, I'll yield to my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Jones is not here. We're going to close out. I do want to say, Councilwoman Spencer. I tried.
You were on a roll. You were doing a great job. I did have just a question about, and I'm sorry if I missed it earlier, the plans examiner positions. I know that there has been a lot of backlog related to plans examiners. Again, apologies if I missed it. Through the chair, what is the staffing update on plans examiners? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, we're attempting to add another residential plan examiner, actually, through a swap of another category. But in addition, onboarding the new person, being willing to outsource some plans examination, which we did factor into the budget, which we talked about earlier, is going to be helpful. So yeah, there has been a backlog, but we believe we're going to, get through that.
All right.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, how difficult are these positions to hire, or how difficult have they been to hire historically?
Depends through the chairman on the type of plans examiner. So residential plans examiner requires a little bit less skill. Master plans examiner is an engineer or an architect, so it's a very highly skilled position and hard to recruit. But like I said, we're kind of going higher in the pay band for those, and it's working out. We just had a successful candidate, which we're thrilled about, and, hopefully we'll be able to fully staff it.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. If you could, we'd like to get those 39 recommendations. It would be great if you could give it to our policy staff as a follow-up. Thank you so much. And we're gonna move to finance, Department of Finance, and we're starting out with Department of Administration. Director, can I grab you, Mr. Harrison, and Mr. Harsh, and
Yes.
Ms. Spence, just real quick out in the hallway.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, to our team, please read Department Administration.
Page 142, Finance Administration, Director Paul C. Barrett. Page 143, Salaries and Wages, 2024 unaudited, $904,673. 2025 budgeted, $1,244,653. Page 144, total expenditures, 2024 unaudited, $1,456,812. 2025 budgeted, $1,872,954. And number of employees December 2024, 8. Budgeted 2025, 11. Mr.
Director,
Chairman.
we've arrived at your shop. You have, come on, you don't want to hang out for more days? You've got an increase in headcount. Please explain.
Sure. Through the chair to the committee, so we're requesting 3 additional services. So one of the first things I did when I came in was try to assess risk in terms of personnel, maybe where we're lacking, and look to fill those roles. So one thing is, so we're asking to add 2 project coordinators. One of those and an administrative manager. One of those project coordinators would be operations based. So I know we've had issues in the past with travel, and I also have a lot of senior people that are doing very menial tasks. So the idea of adding an operations person is to take that off of my ADs and allow them, this new person, to process this operational stuff, as well as the person currently doing travel is also my legislative liaison. I don't think that those 2 roles really mix or make sense. So I'm looking to break those apart and add the travel to this operations role as well. The other 2 roles are to be analysts, so one at the project coordinator, one at the administrative manager level. A lot of this need arises from the ad hoc requests we get for complicated analysis. Right now I have one AD that's able to really dig in and do that. Otherwise it's spilled over to Nicole, and who has to focus on the budget. So it really is a dual need here. So that analysis, we get requests based on revenues, how much can we issue in terms of debt. We have union negotiations. We need to do a lot of analysis. We've also been made aware by the employees themselves that our sinking fund employees, of which we have 2, are very close to retirement.
Okay.
And that is a big risk. So in those job descriptions, we're asking that the people that come in be heavily focused on learning the debt program.
And mentored by those other individuals.
Yes, and exactly. And we've had those conversations with the current employees that they can bring up the next generation, so that we don't have to worry about. Obviously, issuing debt is a very important function of the city, so we don't want that to be void.
146.
So I did that for 4 years. That's why we're bringing them into admin instead of sinking fund, because I can also assist with mentoring them into the debt roles eventually, which is the hope that they'll go from being analysts to, move into those debt roles.
Okay. All right, our professional services are the same as last year. There's no increase there. Let's see. Okay. Everything else looks pretty straightforward. Do I have any questions for Department Administration for Finance? Councilman Conwell.
You mentioned that you're looking at attrition. You mentioned attrition as being a risk, and you said some of your employees, or any of your, because I don't know, do you have, are any of your employees in the union? Are they in the union? They're not. So
Through the chair to the chairman, no. Not that
so
I'm
you
aware of.
could cross-train some of them that you were talking about, dealing with other job functions and job spots. Is that correct, through the chair?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, I think that's the desire for every employee to cross-train. I want someone to be able to do my job in case, God forbid, something happens. And I think that's true with our entire division. Unfortunately, realistically, everybody's job duties, there's only so much bandwidth, and I've got a very hardworking group. So in terms of using the staff I already have, I look to identify something like that, and I feel that the need is for new employees to potentially fill this role.
Yeah, that's important. Are you guys a part of any, like we're part of the National League of Cities. Are you guys part of any groups like that, and you get different magazines, or, because training is ongoing?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, I am a member. It's a little different than what you're used to, but I'm a member of the CFA Institute.
Yeah,
so I actually
I know
served on the board in Jacksonville.
You did?
And they are
about them?
very heavily invested, and you'll see when we go to Treasury, I'm asking for some investment managers as well.
Gotcha.
But that is a very good pool to pull from. Locally, Cleveland has their own society where we can find some young talent, not only debt is an investment. It's just on the issuing side that we're going to be looking to eventually fill those vacancies that eventually happen. But also, that expertise in investments and putting city funds to work is also valuable. But that local group, as well as, I have employees that go to the GFOA conference, and we encourage travel.
When is
and
that, to the chair, when is that conference? I want to go. I was telling Sharon Dumas when she was here, I was interested in going to the conference.
Yeah, so I would highly recommend it. So it's finance professionals from all over, in government in general, professionals from all over the country. And I believe they have their meetings mostly in Florida, their national meetings. I'm not sure. I'm not as heavily involved as some of my employees were, so I'm not sure about the specifics. But you have anything to add on that?
Mr. Gentile, they had a conference here, I think, what was it, 7 years ago?
Yeah, through the chair of the councilman.
Public auditorium?
Yeah, through the chair of the councilman, there's the National GFOA and then the Ohio GFOA. The Ohio GFOA comes to Cleveland.
I'm only a little leverage here, but this is really off budget. Talking about the conferences, so
You mentioned training. When you mentioned training.
no, I'm just saying this is very off budget.
Yeah.
So
when
let's
let me
quickly.
say this to you. When he talks about training,
Yeah.
and it's our training dollars, it comes out of the budget. And he mentioned risk assessments. When he mentioned risk assessments and training, Mr. Chair, that's in the budget. That's in the budget. You got to go deeper than the numbers that you see here.
All right, continue, please.
So continue.
Yeah, through the Ohio GFOA comes to Cleveland every third year. Nationally, they rotate around to different places. A lot of times it's in Florida, it's been in Texas, it's been in Toronto. So the national usually is in May or June, and the Ohio one is, no, the national is in May or June, And then the Ohio one is usually in September.
I went to the Ohio one in Columbus. I went down there. But when you mentioned training dollars, why don't they put training? I know you got training on here. Is it included into what you have in the budget, the training dollars?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, this is just for admin. So we do
Right.
have training for my other divisions. I know a lot of, when we get to financial control, I encourage them to do the GFOA because they're heavily focused into accounting. So we build some travel in there as well.
And let me say this too with the budget, because I know all these, like you got full-time, permanent, those funds that goes in there for fund transfers and all of that. The training dollars, I mean, training should be ongoing. We're sitting here complaining about a lot of issues and concerns, but if each and every department was to constantly train workers, that's why workers sometimes leave because of attrition, because they're not trained. And when workers are trained also, you can cut back on workers' compensation because you have workers that's trained so that they know the way. But if they're not, what do? Your risk. They leave. Is that correct, through the chair?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, I highly encourage my folks to continue training. And yeah, I mean, I've left jobs personally because I wasn't able to move forward and take exams and better myself. So I understand the importance of that.
And those are the reasons I was talking with you about it. It's embedded in the budget. Thank you very much. And thanks for your time.
Councilman Mike Polensek.
Thank you. I'm for voting to send Conwell. That's what I wanted to. Okay. On page 144, excuse me, let's back up. On page 143 under full-time permanent, there's a big increase there, but I'm assuming that's because on page 144, you're increasing the number of administrative managers and project coordinators. Is that why?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, I think you're out of the room. We were discussing this. So I haven't asked for 3 new employees,
Yes.
2 project coordinators, 1 administrative manager. Very quickly to review, one is operations based and will help us with travel, and also I have senior employees that are doing very lower level type functions. And then the other 2 would be for complex data analysis that we need.
Okay, so you believe these are critical employees that you need?
Yes, and through the chair to the councilman, the other thing we discussed is the risk that the sinking fund employees that have been here a long time and express the desire to retire in the next few years will leave without having any kind of backup. So part of this ask, these 2 employees that will be analysts will be also asked to learn the debt program and doing that analysis.
Okay. Thank you. Is Betsy Ruby still here?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yes.
That Ms. Ruby?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, yes. She came out of retirement to take this role.
Yeah, because
Take it.
some
God-
people are
God bless
valuable
her.
to the city.
Oh, she's very valuable.
Yeah, that's
I know.
what people don't realize.
And to the chair, this is why I want to bring people in now, so that they can learn from her, because she has been here a long time and knows everything. So,
well, I'm glad about that because
Okay.
Ms. Ruby knows her stuff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Hearing no other questions or seeing no other questions, we'll move to Division of Accounts. Oh, Councilman Joe Jones.
I'm going to be brief, Mr. Chairman, on this one. I just want to ask a question. It was something that kind of slipped my mind a little bit. When you are hiring, do you have your own in-house hiring system, or do you work through human resources, Mr. Coleman?
through the chair to the councilman, we will work through human resources. I will also personally go to events. We mentioned the CFA Society to look for talent and encourage them to apply when we have the positions posted.
So all of these divisions basically, more or less, comes from the Human Resources Department when you're trying to get people hired in?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Barrett.
Thank you. We'll move now to Division of Accounts.
Page 145, Division of Accounts, Commissioner Lanya Moss Walker. Page 146, Salaries and Wages, 2024 unaudited, $1,257,231. 2025 budgeted, $1,455,158. Page 147, total expenditures, 2024 unaudited, $2,686,000. $623,024. 2025 budgeted, $3,091,743. Number of employees, December of 2024, 18. Budgeted 2025, 21, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Director?
Yeah, through the chair to the committee, I would just like to point out some metrics and give my commissioner a shout out. So if you look, you'll see the accounts payable checks processed has increased pretty substantially from 2022 to over 25,000. That's a lot of transactions, but you'll notice that the account payable processing time for these payments has actually gone down since 2023 to 2024. Oh, did I not have that page?
Oh, no, I'm
It's
sorry.
page 145.
I'm on the wrong. Go ahead. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Yeah, so 5 to 7 days is desirable because that's time to actually quality check and make sure that everything on an invoice is in the system and everything is accurate. So that is actually very good to be in that 5 to 7 range. And I just wanted to point that out. Despite the higher workload, we're still efficient in our processing.
Well, thank you so much. And before I go to Councilman Jones, I want to also give a shout out to Commissioner Lanya Moss Walker. She's another person that really is a valuable employee for the city of Cleveland that are hidden within 601 Lakeside that people don't know that really make things move. And this is a clear example of her work. So I want to commend Commissioner Moss Walker as well. I have Councilman Joe Jones and then Councilman Michael Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you beat me to the punch in terms of just giving a shout out to Commissioner Moss and to see her production and her metrics. She, Mr. Chairman, as to Mr. Barrett, she's, as long as I've known her, bless you.
We all are. Right.
All right, now. Good, Councilman.
That's a good one. All right, so now, thank you for the laugh, Councilwoman Stephanie House-Jones. Yes, Stephanie House-Jones. Thank you. Just want to, just point out that as long as I've known the commissioner, she's been absolutely professional, very outstanding, and has handled her work. And I agree with the chairman. She is super valuable to your department. And with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I want to move down here to this department as it relates to the budget. We're slightly up. Why is that cost just up some here? Is it because we've added more people, or we're looking to add, and it's a part of the payroll increasing of the staffing level? Or is it just a combination of that and in addition to human resources increases?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, that's correct. So we have 2 additional headcount from the pool, so that's the reason, majority of the reason for the increase in costs. And 1 additional position as well.
I see. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councilman Mike Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable colleagues, on page 145, under optic metrics, the number 4, what does the 17 boxes represent?
I'm in here. Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, I'm trying to get how many W-2s are in a box, but it's 17 boxes of W-2s that were processed.
Okay, well, that's, I just didn't understand what that is. It's boxes of W-2s.
The boxes that they process W-2s, what they send out.
But they don't know how many W-Ts are in a box.
Yeah, and again, if I could, through the chair,
If Councilwoman House has a point, Councilman Polensek?
Yes, I'm fine with her.
Could you, what is that equivalent to?
Thank you to the chair, to the team. What is that? That's so random. I'm just like, how would anybody be able to interpret that?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilwoman, so that's where all employees across the city, those also get posted online, but we have to send them out physically as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got ours.
I'm not going to harp on it, but if you put it as a metric, again, it would be, for people's understanding, it's very random, and that actually doesn't tell me anything, just to be real frank.
Right.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilwoman, we'll get more specific
There
numbers,
you go.
and we'll note that for
Thank
the next
you.
budget
Yeah.
book.
And if I could add, and I think everybody, it would be good for everybody, it's jargon somewhere in there. What does a box mean?
Yeah.
And I think what she's saying is like, if you say, it's 2,000 employees per box or something like that, what does that equate to? So that box actually is some kind of unit, measuring unit, and that's what I understand that.
That's right.
She's really trying to understand,
And
right?
that's why I asked the
All right.
question. All right.
Got you.
Yeah.
So if you could give us a definition
Okay.
of what a box
Right.
unit means.
Okay.
Okay?
Because
Councilman Palencia.
I got 17 boxes in my office of junk, okay? Okay? Yeah, so that's the fact.
We got some comedy on, Council.
That's exactly.
Through the chair, the councilman.
On page 146, under contractual services, professional services, a big jump there. What do you attribute that to?
It's ADP accruals. Yeah, through the chair to the councilman. So this is for some temporary employees that we get every year, and also for our ADP system and Kronos as well, which is a timekeeping.
So it jumped by that amount in 1 year?
Part of it used to be here.
Through the chair to the council member, some of that actually was moved from the other contractual category
Okay.
to correct the coding. So you'll see a drop there from 700 to
Okay.
550.
I just want to be clarified here. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. I believe that is it for Division of Accounts.
Yes.
And I would instruct and ask if all of council, at least the Finance Committee, we have 5 members, so please stand pat. So 5 members, if you guys please stand pat for the Finance Committee. Division of License and Assessment, Division of Assessments and Licenses.
Page 148, Division of Assessments and Licenses, Commissioner Diedrich Stevens. Page 149, Salaries and Wages, 2024 unaudited, $1,760,252. 2025 budgeted, $1,927,232. Page 150, total expenditures, 2024 unaudited, $3,133,788. 2025 budgeted, $3,933,541. And page 152, number of employees, December of 2024, 23, budgeted 2025, 35, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Director?
So through the chair to the committee, I'll try to head off some questions in advance. So I know on the on page 148, if you look at entertainment venues applications issued, you see a huge jump from 43 to 210 back down to 24, and that's because these applications, these licenses to hold events at different venues, they renew every 2 years on the odd number year. So you're going to get a big increase in the odd number years for those renewals. Also, if you look on page 149, you'll see an increase in professional services by about 400,000, and that specifically is for billing automation systems, which is will create invoices for a more efficient customer service experience. Also for clerical temp resources and online residential parking tax exemption program, as well as short-term rental software is rolled into that as well. We also have some billing and collection software specific to business analysis, best practices, RFP development, software purchases, and implementation. So that some of these new systems are what make up the difference in professional services.
Thank you. You're getting good, Director. You're already forecasting everybody's punch, right? Councilman Mike Palencia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on page 151, for the viewing public, under charges for service, what would that be, charges for service? Give us an example what that would be, charges for service.
That's money we take in for licenses, 100,000. Weights and measures.
Mr. Chairman, can you put me down?
Through the chair, that is for weights and measures.
That's weights and measures.
Yes.
Why would it be going down?
Through the chair to the councilman, so this is, again, the conservative estimate of what we expect to bring in. So if you look at 2022, we were at 100,000 and then 128, and then we had a jump in 2024. But again, this is a semi-conservative estimate of
Okay.
what we think we'll bring in.
Because I would assume that, you know, that a lot of businesses are back, a lot of things are back where you're going to be out. So I would assume that's going to improve. The licenses and permits, I think that pretty much speaks for itself. You know, I thought it would be higher than that. But then under other tax, what do you include under other tax? The 53 million.
Through the chair to the councilman, that is mostly the admissions tax, the parking tax, and hotel tax.
The three would add up to that much?
Yeah, there's admission tax, motor vehicle lesser tax,
Okay.
parking tax, yeah, hotel tax.
Okay, so there's more in there than that, than just those three. Okay. I'm just trying to understand the revenue streams here, because again, my growing concern is, as I said out of the gate here, as it pertains to what potential cuts we could get on the federal level and on the state level, and I want to be assured that all revenue-producing departments and divisions, that we're doing everything we can to maximize revenue.
That's right.
I want to make sure that that's the marching orders out of the council to you folks. We got to maximize revenue in every department and division in light of what we could be experiencing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, just wanted to make a point to your point. So we recently had, wish Director O'Toole was still here. We recently had a meeting with her to see about contracts for the licenses and permits that she needs and the charges that our vendor charge online, to see if we can get them lowered. So that's something that Commissioner Stevens is diligently working on as well.
Yeah, because one of the things, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to ask when the Director of Building Housing was up here. We got all these characters rehabbing houses and buildings in the city without pulling any permits. I see it repeatedly, and I'm turning stuff in, and that goes back to fines and forfeitures. Is that I got to say again, every revenue producing department in building and housing is one of those because of permits, fees for work, et cetera, et cetera. We got to make sure that they're doing what they need to do from a standpoint of making sure people are doing things illegally and are denying us revenue into our revenue streams. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Joe Jones. Or do you have Councilman Joe Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's that my colleague, Mike Polensek, is always so thorough. He's hit all the points that I wanted to touch on, but I'll just wrap it up quickly on the admission tax, hotel tax, parking tax. I guess there's more taxes involved with that on page 151. How many revenue streams, tax systems are here? I know it's more than just these here, could not total the 53.8 million we're looking at. It has to be far more than that, right? So these only, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So we have admission tax, hotel tax, parking tax, and what else?
Motor vehicle lesser tax.
And motor vehicle? Explain, is it a motor vehicle tax or?
Through the chair, it's a very small number, the motor vehicle lesser tax.
Mm-hmm.
It's about $2 million.
I see. And you do have this broken down?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes.
Could you send that over to us, please? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to our CFO, just to get a breakdown on what that 53 million is. And then on, as it relates to revenues, just want to make sure, Mr. Chairman, to the director that, we have our department is as efficient as it possibly can be in these areas that generate revenue, making sure that we have the latest everything. So I would presume that would be the case, or could you shed some light on that area?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, one of the directives I gave to all my commissioners is to look at the systems you're using and to modernize as much as possible. I'm very much in favor of change, and especially when it comes to revenue generating divisions that I oversee. So I have directed Commissioner Stevens to go in, look at what systems we're using, look to modernize so we can be as efficient and provide services as cheaply as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No further questions.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll now move to the Division of Treasury. The goal is to get through half of the Department of Finance because I know a couple of us do have appointments, so let's try to figure that out. Go ahead, Division of Treasury.
Okay, so through the...
Hold up 1 second. She's reading the record.
Page 153, Division of Treasury, Treasurer Natalie Banks. Page 154, Salaries and Wages, 2024 unaudited, $395,992. 2025 budgeted, $694,737. Total expenditures on page 155, 2024 unaudited, $637,379. 2025 budgeted, $1,112,170. Page 156, number of employees December of 2024, 7. Budgeted 2025, 9, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Director?
Okay, through the chair to the committee, just want to point out that there are a few green sheets for Treasury. For page 153, the 2023 number for interest earnings changed by a few $100s, so not a huge change, but obviously we want it to be right. So that'll be on your green sheet. As well as on page 156, we found an error with a formula in the staffing level, so that's been corrected, so that you'll see that. Just to, again, head off some questions in this division. If you look at the expenses and compare that to the head count, so looking at your green sheet on 156, you'll see that there is an ask for 2 investment managers on this list. So currently, if you look down at our part-time employees, we have 1 part-time employee that's running the investments for the city. So he comes in, he decides how to invest the funds, he buys securities out on the market, but he's part-time, again, someone was retired that came back to do this role. So I saw this as a risk to the city. I think we need to build out an investment team here because this is important and it is a treasury function. So I'm asking for the 2 investment managers, and that part-time employee I have spoken to and has agreed to kind of mentor, just like Betsy will over in Sinking Fund, kind of mentor the next generation until they're ready to go back into retirement so that we have a firm, educated investment team here.
So where are those 2 positions located, Director?
So to the chair, page 156, if you go down under investment manager.
Okay.
There's
I
2
got you.
positions
Under
there.
professionals, okay, got you.
Yep.
All right. So you're basically trying to increase your budget to include those 2 investment managers?
To the chair, that's correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, I have Mike Polensik, and then I have Councilman Kevin Conway.
Okay.
Can you put me down?
So, I'm
going to be brief.
before I touch on, because I was going to ask that about the investment, but I want to go to page 155. Again, interest earnings, investment income is down, projected to be down approximately $6 million, which have raised this issue over the course of these hearings with investment, with interest income, which again, I keep asking myself, where are we putting our money? In what banks, what financial institution? Because interest income should have been, in my opinion, should have been increasing. But nonetheless, it's an issue to the director. I'm going to continue to be bird dogging you guys on because it ties into the Community Reinvestment Act as well. You touched on it on page 156 because I had it highlighted. The investment manager, you wound up last year with at the end of 24, with no investment manager. And I guess I have to ask, because you just commented, how in the heck can a city of 2.1 billion have a part-time investment manager or now no investment manager at the end of 24? Don't we utilize outside consultants as well to advise us on investments? I mean, I don't get that one. I'm like shocked here.
Yeah. So through the chair to the councilman, I had the same reaction.
I'm glad to hear that.
One thing that put me a little bit at ease is the person in that role,
Hopkins.
Chris Hopkins, is very good and has a very extensive background. Also, Jim Hartley has a very extensive investment background.
Yeah.
So they were able to provide a backstop and have done a good job maintaining. But I do think that we can look at our investment portfolio, and this just falls right into my argument for getting a couple investment managers. We can look at how we're investing. I think most of our funds right now are invested in some sort of money market equivalent or sweep fund, and I think we can do better than that and get a better return. So, and part of that number for the interest earnings going down is because we expect interest rates to fall, and they have already fallen. So there's an aspect of that and an aspect of conservative budgeting where we definitely don't want to over budget when we're projecting investment returns, as opposed to slightly under budgeting that.
But this is, Mr. Chairman, to the director again. It's what I said earlier. This is about revenue enhancement. And I'm kind of mortified to hear that something critical is where we invest our city funds. We had a part-time person doing that. And do we use any outside firms to advise us?
So through the chair to the councilman, this is another question that I asked. They're using software. We have a Bloomberg terminal, and this gentleman comes in and Chris comes in and invests. But that's another thing I wanted to look at was because other places I've been, we've had a consultant that can continually look at our investments and give us advice. So that's another thing that we're looking at, whether we need to go ahead and do an RFP for a consultant as well.
Well, Mr. Chairman, before I urge you to hire some old Slovenian ladies to manage your books here, you better figure out, this is critical. This is a critical area where we invest our money. So what I want to ask as well, where do we have 81 bank accounts at?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, so we have 3 major banks that we use, PNC, Key Bank, and I believe it's Huntington. So they're spread out amongst there. One of the mayor's strategic initiatives is for us to consolidate those. So I think we've reduced them by about 8, but we're still looking at, I think right now we have debt service principal held separately than interest, like the reserve fund. So those are things we can consolidate. So we're looking at actually minimizing the amount or lessening the amount of bank accounts we have.
I would strongly recommend it. Now, we know the enterprise counts have got to be kept separate. But for 81 bank accounts, just to manage that in itself
is a job.
And making sure that we are maximizing our investment, our interest income from that. Again, I'm glad to hear that you're looking at some type of consolidation, but again, what this has done for us, at least I think it has, it's opened up. We're talking about transparency. We got to do a better job. Too many bank accounts, investment managers. I totally concur that we've got to have full-time people doing that. We got to be looking at where our revenue is at. I could tell you, last week, I sat down with my own son when he had a CD come up, looking at where he could get the maximum interest at what bank. So we were shopping. I mean, to me, that's just common sense. We put our money where we can make the most money back, and we also put our money in those institutions that support our neighborhoods reinvestment, making loans, having neighborhood branches in our neighborhoods. We have got to start using city money as a tool, and we haven't done that, which is mind-boggling to me. But I'm glad to hear what you said, Mr. Chairman, to the director, that we're going to do things differently. And again, we'll know come budget next year if this has worked to our advantage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, if I could, through the chair to the councilman, just want to address about the banks.
Yeah.
So one of my personal initiatives, this is more admin, is a bank outreach, and we've had meetings. I know the administration, it's important to them as well. So I personally have very good relationships with the bankers and the underwriters that I have in Jacksonville. I've actually had some of them fly up here to meet with us and introduce us to teams. So not just for investments or issuing bonds, I mean, the banks can help us solve complex problems as well. So I think that that's very important, and that's something high on the agenda is making sure we're outreaching to all the banks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I put you on the list. Councilman Kevin Conwell.
I'll be real quick again. To the chair, where's your office located? Is it the same place where Sharon Dumas was offices at?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, I'm in Suite 104, where Ahmed was before me.
And just real quick, I understand with Councilmember Mike Polinsik, you were thinking about probably like SAFE, weren't you? Remember SAFE over at the county? When they didn't have systems in place? You remember that? With then we ended up going belly up. Before your time, young McCormick, but your dad was there, and your dad was calling it out. His father was an extremely bright guy, very, very bright. Interest rates, you said you think they're going down, and you mentioned the reason why you did something, and I wasn't able to follow that.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, so we were discussing interest on page 155, the projected interest earnings and investment income. So part of the reason for that is rates have come down since the highs. Since inflation has recovered, that's what the Fed will do. The Fed will raise rates to, when you have high interest, to kind of cool down the economy. And so now that that's come down, and we can have it further. I don't want to take up all the committee's time with an investment discussion because I can get wrapped up in that. But I'd be happy to meet with you.
So, like with the CPI, are you measuring that against the CPI? I don't know. Are you?
Yeah. So the CPI was somewhere around, if you annualize it, back in 2022, it was about 9%, and it's come down to a little over 3%. So. A normal, the Fed's target is about 2%, so it's still elevated, but we're getting closer to where we need to be.
Yeah, that's your indicator?
Through the chair to the councilman,
I'm sorry, through the chair, sorry.
that is the most widely known indicator for inflation.
Okay. And that's it, because I was wondering how you got there. Thank you.
Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go off the same line of questioning that Mike Polinsik went off of. I thought was really, really good. Want to get in on page page 155, where it says 33 million. You have here interest earnings / investment income. So this is more than just our question, Mr. Chairman, to the director. This is more than just interest sitting in the banks, but you also have investments here. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Barrett?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, investments earn interest. So if we own bonds, we're getting a coupon off of that, a coupon payment, which is interest on the money that we're lending.
So
that's rolled up.
These are with the bonds. Is this all in one pool, or is this separate? Is this a separate breakdown, Mr. Chairman? Because I know I see the slash there, interest earning. So I presume, so this is where I need the clarification, Mr. Chairman, that I don't want to presume, rather, that this is all money sitting in the bank.
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, I believe this encompasses our investment income for all the accounts. We can give you a breakout if you need it.
Is that for clarification, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Barrett? The 81 different accounts?
Through the chair to the councilman, so all the accounts have different purposes and uses, but it encompasses whatever investments we have that are accruing interest that we receive interest off of.
Do you have somewhere in the budget book where we can see those accounts, that breakdown?
So through the chair to the councilman, that would go granular into individual bank accounts instead of line items in the budget book. So we do not have that, but we could provide you a list of our bank accounts.
And does this, Mr. Chairman, to the director, account for just the general fund, or is it
through the chair to the councilman, it's just for the general fund.
Just for the general fund. And so, Mr. Chairman, does the Division of Treasury deal with any other, funds from subsidiary operations too?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilman, they're involved in many transactions and payments across the city. So yes, they are involved in most divisions across the city and their transactions.
So just want to make sure I'm clear here, right? So we got a $2.8 billion operation in total. including the subsidiary operations, that the Division of Treasury also deals with all of those variable accounts as well? Mr. Chairman, to the CFO?
Okay.
2.1.
Is it 2.1 billion?
So through the chair to the councilman, that's correct. They deal with all that.
So then that brings me back to, that is a lot of work, Mr. Chairman, to our CFO. And so we're talking about more than the revenues, it appears to be on page 155. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman, to the CFO?
Through the chair to the council, I'm not sure I understand your question.
I guess the question is, you're dealing with more than just what you're showing us that your Division of Treasury is dealing with, right? So when I look at for an example, Mr. Chairman, to our CFO, I'm presuming that the $1 million that we have put in here for salaries, payroll, and all of that, that covers 9 employees or 7 employees currently, and you're hoping to get another 2. So they're dealing with $2.1 billion across a broad spectrum. So then this here doesn't totally represent the totality of all the work that they do.
So through the chair to the councilman, I think you're looking at the investment returns and trying to assign that to the entire budget. What I was trying to imply was that all of the divisions in the city, their transactions flow through Treasury. They're responsible for, making sure all that happens seamlessly, protecting against fraud, that sort of thing. So they have a huge responsibility. And, again, I just want to give a quick shout out to Natalie Banks, who's, our treasurer. It does a great job.
All right, so it's a shout out to Natalie, who? Banks. Natalie Banks is a shout out. Great job. I'm impressed here because it seems like you guys are doing way more than what we're seeing here in this book. So let me just say this, Mr. Chairman, to our CFO. I think it's brilliant that you are wise enough to make the decisions to bring on 2 additional people to help us grow our revenues and our earnings and our investments. And I would encourage, Mr. Chairman, to our CFO that should be broad-based across the entire spectrum and in all of our accounts that we have, looking at ways and means to grow the money of the city of Cleveland. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, the question I would have, are you looking to forecast maybe even growing this a little bit more than the 2, or you're okay with this budget with the 2.5 people that you're going to look to bring on?
Through the chair to the councilman, we're good with the budget now. The team that we have can handle all of those transactions. If we increase and account for investment managers, then I think that strengthens us. But I think at this point, our budget is where we want it to be.
Mr. Chairman, I have no unreadiness here on the Division of Treasury. I want to thank the director for doing a good job in this area.
Councilman Conway.
Are you going to, through the chair, you brought on 2 new people. You have the part-time guy to, because he's the expert, to train them, right, to cultivate them. When you think that they're where they need to be, you're going to keep the part-time guy on for his expertise? Through the chair to the director.
Through the chair to the councilman, absolutely. It takes time, especially if we get whether it's a young person or someone just starting out into the mix. And I also want the council to know that Jim Hartley, one of my ADs, has an incredible and extensive background in investments, so he will also be assisting with bringing them up to speed.
But you look at contingencies all the time, which is good. That's real good. I like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman House Jones.
Yes, through the chair, to our finance director, I know, are you, I guess, working with Mr. Kenny on the kind of banking solutions type thing for the city of Cleveland? I'm looking on their face, I'm gonna say that's a no. Okay, so with that being,
They said they didn't hear the question.
you didn't hear the question?
No, through the chair to the councilwoman, we're not sure who you're referring to.
Yeah, I know, so that's a no. Right. So basically, and because it's the conversation that we've consistently had about the city of Cleveland not necessarily having our formal Community Reinvestment Act signed. I know we just recently had 2 signed, if I'm not mistaken, with Key Bank and, was it Huntington? I think it was Key Bank and Huntington. Beyond that, though, I guess the question that I have is, what are the plans in the openness of the administration? And this is our operations questions, but it's tied to the budget, about changing our policies, specifically when it comes to the requirements that we have for financial institutions of being an actual depositor, because that's fundamentally what the issue is. We need to change our actual policy of what the standard needs to be able to hold deposits for the city of Cleveland. This current setup we have is not ideal, and we're not getting the most use out of our dollars that can then have an impact further in the community. So I guess, do you have an idea of a timeline as to the administration's partnership with this body to have the actual policy conversations to change what we have?
Yeah, so through the chair to the councilwoman, this was brought up by my treasurer, Ms. Banks, and we're talking about that, the requirements that maybe those should be a little looser to where we actually invest, so that we can invest in smaller institutions that may be able to help the community. So again, this goes back to a point made earlier about bank outreach. So I think it's important for, and I know the treasurer, again, has already started doing, meetings on her own as well, but I enjoy those meetings, so I like to be in on them. And, we want to build the relationships with the banks to see if we can partner with them to see if there's things they can do for the community, whether it's small business loans or something like that, something similar, with our partnership. So I think the first step is to establish those relationships. And we are looking, to your policy question, we are looking at all policies and procedures across finance, and we will look at that, and we are looking at that banking relationship policy.
So through the chair to the director, the reason why I am bringing up the connection with, I think it's Aaron Kinney. Yes, I think there was, because it's the whole initiative, I believe it's Bank on Cleveland. And he was brought in here specifically to work on these things. Now I think we are a year and, he's not here anymore.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilwoman, he resigned. He's no longer with the city.
I believe Jim Hartley was working with him when he.
Okay. And this is what happens. Again, just we have something going on, and I'm assuming he hasn't been replaced.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, not to my knowledge,
Okay.
but we are, again, finance proactively is going out and trying, doing what we can to establish those relationships and see what kind of programs are out there.
Well, I don't know if there was work that was actually done. Well, no, I know there was some body of work at some point for the time that he was here for the initiative Bank on Cleveland. And so is there a timeline that we have? I know this is going to be a 2026. I'm going to just be realistic. This is not going to happen until 2026 and beyond. So never mind. This is a 2026 conversation for whatever council and administration will be here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no other questions, Director, can we break for a minute and then come back for the final at about 1 o'clock? And then we'll come back for the stretch run about 1 o'clock. So we're going to gavel out and come back at 1 o'clock. So everybody come back at 1 o'clock sharp. We'll go from there, okay? Yep. Thank you.